No, you're not seeing things on Sportswire Radio. I am back for the third time today. That's right, my third time here in 7 hours. And this time we're going to talk about the world of WWE, AEW, some TV deals, and maybe some breaking news that literally happened just about an hour ago involving yet Vince McMahon, more Vince McMahon news once again. And two of my guys to talk about it is none other than Mr. former Randy Dillon, wrestling expert. He was also the host of the Hockey Fan Chat. You've heard him throughout our website on sportswireradio.org, where we have our online radio station. Of course, Randy did a little bit of dabbling in his own right in the wrestling world, and he's also very good friends with Mr. Jinder Mahal, and also alongside me to talk about some number of different things here also in the world of wrestling. He is the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. Looks like that'll be coming back in the near and distant future. Mr. TBK, he also created a logo for us here on Sportswire Radio, which we'll play, although I cut, I think, the right-hand side of it, but you get the point. He's got a logo for us that he created. We'll play it. Gentlemen, how are we doing? This might be the most liveliest Friday I think I've ever seen in the wrestling world, and maybe my Sportswire Radio career, among other things. So, gentlemen, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Tom, but man, what a week it's been for wrestling, from the Netflix deal, Vince McMahon once again, and yeah, it's been something crazy.
I mean, where do we start? I mean, I guess we should probably start with the news that just broke, like I said about an hour ago, that Vince McMahon has resigned in his position as Endeavor. And I was wondering, what you guys thought about it. I'll go with you, Mr. TBK, first. I'm sure you've always got something interesting and controversial to say. So for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, tell me what you think.
Let me scoot the microphone back for this one.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Jimmy Controversy, of course, who came on just a little while ago and who is, oh, by the way, a part of the 7th biggest wrestling company in the world, just mentioned Sportswire Radio, actually tweeted and retweeted pretty much the same thing you said. So if it makes you feel in any good company, you're in the same company as Jimmy Controversy. Not bad, right?
Well, then great minds think alike. Yeah, no, this is, you should have stayed gone. You should have stayed gone. You probably could have avoided all the media attention at this point, or at least half of it. It is, you got what you deserve. You can't buy your way out of this one. See you.
Well, I mean, Randy, how do you follow that? I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, what do you think of this? And I'll ask a number of follow-up questions because there's so much to talk about here.
If you've read the articles, first off, they are disturbing, so please be aware. But listen,
67 pages. I mean, I listened to Jimmy Controversy.
I've read only clips of it, but it is.
Well, Jimmy Controversy, apparently, because he's the CEO of Pro Wrestling Venom, said he read all 67. So I'm not arguing with Jimmy Controversy because it is his day here on Sportswire Radio.
But listen, you've heard the stuff with Vince, what he's done, and listen, at the end of the day, it's not right. It's not. I definitely think there's a line he crossed, but listen, things catch up to you in life, and I think if you're a TKO, Slim Jim was going to back out. Listen, you have WrestleMania season around the corner. You have the Rumble tomorrow starting. It's just the big Netflix deal. The worst time publicity-wise, I think this is the only choice they had. There's no way you're coming back from this.
I want to ask you guys a question because obviously you spoke a little bit about what happened in this NDA and this woman. And, obviously also on the board of directors was Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Now, Stephanie McMahon, we really haven't heard much of in WWE for just about a year now, guys, right around this time last year. She pretty much resigned. She was kind of the de facto leader in charge, and she resigned the minute that Vince McMahon came in. But Triple H has obviously been the figurehead. He's been involved heavily here and all these things. And I'm curious, what do you think this means in implications for a Triple H and a Stephanie McMahon? I'm curious on what you guys think about that.
I was actually talking to a friend before this, and we were trying to figure out who was involved, who was it. Pandora's box, don't play it, but we think Stephanie definitely knew and somehow could be involved. Triple H, we think, knew, but he wasn't too close, wasn't really involved. And same with the likes of Nick Khan. I think Bruce Pritchard is someone else who was involved. Shane McMahon, possibly. P.S. Michael Hayes, I think, knew but wasn't involved, and same with Nick Khan.
Does this also, let me ask you guys a follow-up, and I'll say hello to people in a second, but Kevin Dunn, who's, synonymous with WWE. We're going back probably since before all of us were born, right? And he just resigned recently from his position. And he had been in that position for, like I said, 30 plus years. Do you think that he resigned and he knew something was coming down? I'm just curious on that because he was so close to Vince.
I think he was.
You think he was?
Yeah. TBK. Sorry, I thought you were gonna say something there.
Oh, you're good, buddy. No, I think if you're anybody with a position of power right now, you're doing everything you can to grease some wheels, to hush some things up, because right now, I feel like Slim Jim is just the start. You start losing sponsorship. You start, guys in the top start resigning. Guys in the top start, it's not a good look right now. And I mean, if I'm TKO, I'm sitting there going, what do we get ourselves into?
I was going to be my next point, and Ron Franklin says he'll be joining later. I'm just going to warn you, Ron, we're going to talk Baseball Hall of Fame after this. So I know you want to get into football, but I don't think I'm going to do as much football tonight because I got to spend a little bit of time on this. You mentioned TKO, TBK, and obviously I'm going to get both you guys' thoughts on it because, again, I think people are going to really be fascinated where this goes. What do you think then this all means for the deal that was had with Netflix? I mean, Netflix just signs in, right, for this 10-year deal for $5 billion. There's an opt-out after 5 years, though, or they can stay for the 10 full years, or Netflix can renew for another 10 years afterwards. Now, obviously, all this news literally breaks, like, right after the deal. But I'm curious, what do you think Netflix's position is on all this?
This is interesting because I've talked to people in the wrestling industry. Even when I was with Bruce Hart, I've talked to a couple of his friends back in the day, and the wrestling community, they know kind of everything that's happening. It's not just like all of a sudden, oh, well, this happened. You kind of hear the whisper. You know what to expect. And I think anyone who's worked with Vince McMahon kind of knew, like, this guy, he has a really dark side to him. But
let me ask you a follow-up. You mentioned Bruce Hart for a second, right? Yeah. Now, you were trained by Bruce Hart. You obviously went in, you tried your hand at it. Different things happened. I'm not here to discuss that. Now, I don't know if Bruce ever spoke about you with Vince McMahon in any way, speaking about the McMahons, but obviously the Hart family and the McMahon family have this weird relationship that goes back probably, I would say, safe to say 80 years between Vince McMahon Sr. and Stu Hart. And I was curious, I guess, because we have an interesting audience here that's tuning in now and they've kind of, see what we're doing on Sportswire now on a Friday night. Did Bruce Hart ever explain or talk about anything in any way about Vince McMahon to you?
It rarely Vince McMahon. Because Bruce did more of the bringing up. Like I think if anyone could talk more about Vince, it would be Brett. Bruce really wasn't involved.
Yeah. God.
But one thing found interesting, I saw they said a former wrestler was commenting about things and about the situation with Lance Storm. And people got to remember, Lance Storm actually brought a lot of talent to WWE and Vince McMahon as well throughout the years with the likes of Chelsea Green, Peyton Royce, Billy Kay with the Iconics, and definitely a lot of different talent he brought to that industry in his comments. So I gotta say, like,
well, talk about for the audience, what exactly did he say? Talk about that for the audience that's here, because a lot of people are tuning in on YouTube right now. Talk to me.
I think definitely that someone needs to be fired. Like, you can't get away from this. This is something you can't be buried. People need to be held accountable for something like this.
Who do you think would be held accountable with this?
I'm honestly definitely the McMahons. I think Vince, Shane, Stephanie, Bruce Pritchard, I think, got to be one guy up there because of his relationship.
And not Triple H?
The thing with Triple H that really gets me interesting is he's been in the superstar position, and he has used his authority and power, but I don't think he's always tried to keep himself away from that situation of that dark side. But why
do you gentlemen think that Stephanie McMahon has literally said not a word for a year? I mean, that's been bizarre. I mean, I don't even think I've seen a picture of Stephanie McMahon anywhere in a year. If I look on her Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, anything else, I mean, there's been literally not a single word from her in a year. There was even rumblings that she was divorcing Triple H, which obviously that was kind of proved to be dishonest comment. And Kevin Nash had mentioned it on his podcast, Click This. But I mean, okay, so we take that aside, but she hasn't said a word in a year.
Yeah, there's some part of me that has to believe, at some point the father-daughter relationship,
Something interesting there. Listen, I mean, it reminds me of an episode of Law and Order where somebody knows something, and I took law in college. I took law, I took criminal justice, I took government, and I worked in the government for a brief cup of coffee, and I've obviously worked in the world of politics. And something tells me now. Again, I'm not very intelligent on most things, as we can see on Sportswire Radio. I'm friends with many other people, like Jimmy Controversy, for example. Some would say, but I happen to think that I'm a little bit intelligent when it comes to being friends with Mr. Controversy, but. From what my knowledge is outside of doing this and kind of tying 2 and 2 together, Mrs. McMahon or Mrs. Levesque has to know something that was going to come down the pike, and maybe that's a reason why she hasn't said anything for about a year.
I mean, maybe, possibly, maybe she got out while the getting was good, and maybe she knew that eventually this was all going to come out. Who knows? I mean, again, at some point, I have to believe that the father-daughter relationship, the father-son-in-law relationship, I want to say that the really dark personal life of Vince McMahon, I would like to believe that Triple H had no knowledge of that, but who knows?
I mean, he's obviously had communication with Vince McMahon, right, Randy, over these months. I mean, so I would have to say that he definitely had to know. I mean, let's not be naive and be WWE homers. I mean, let's not be Meltzer either in pro AEW. But I mean, there have to be something or some knowledge that Paul Levesque and Stephanie McMahon Levesque, especially those two. Shane McMahon's kind of been out of the game for a while, so maybe I'll give him a pass. But those two specifically, because they've been in power, and Mrs. Levesque was in power a year ago, right around this time. They had to have known something. They've had to have had some type of discussions with Mr. McMahon.
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me of the whole Kyle Beach situation with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yes.
For some of those hockey listeners out there, where a lot of the Blackhawks knew about this, but really only the few kind of play a key part. And this kind of reminds me where I see some guy like Triple H, who kind of in a Kevin Shell day off, who is the owner, who is the GM of the Winnipeg Jets, who knew about this but wasn't involved. And you have guys like Joe Quinville, who the coach was involved
situation. We saw exactly there. Yep. I mean, it's a really, really big deal there. Let me say hello to some people since we're here live now. What's up, Tom, Bryce, Randy, and TBK? How are you guys doing today? We're doing great. I mean, but obviously, I don't know how WWE is feeling right now. I want to say hello to a man who, why is he up right now? He's got to get in the ring. And give or take, I would say about maybe 14 to 15 hours from now, that is Mr. Jamdog. He is the CCW Hardcore Champion going into our Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame coming up on February the 13th. I wish him well in the ring. He's got double duty tomorrow, but I wonder why he's actually up. It'll actually be today, his time, but thank you for tuning in. Ron Franklin, we got to. I'll come back to the Netflix deal in a second, Ethan. I will come back to that. But, you guys spoke about ramifications and sponsors, but, I mean, how many more dominoes do you guys think will fall from the situation, especially the news that broke a little while ago that, again, we saw Slim Jim become no longer a sponsor and Vince McMahon be, no longer in his position of power with Endeavor TKO?
I mean, I'll put it to you this way. If it does come out that Paul Levesque had knowledge of these doings, it just, what does that do to arguably the new face of the WWE? What does that do to the WWE as a whole?
I think it's an excellent question because I think now, they just had this big deal that they signed for 10 years, $5 billion. WWE gets all this, rose-colored glasses and praise, and it's a revolutionary deal. They're getting into so many homes. They're going around the world. And then we have this. And on top of it, not to implicate him because I don't think he had anything to do with it. The Rock is now on the board of directors. I mean, doesn't now he have to deal with this? And he's a big-time Hollywood star, and we know what they've been dealing with Epstein and everything else in their strike. I mean, not to say that The Rock has any knowledge, as I don't think he personally has anything to do with this, but this has to certainly be a little bit of bad news for The Rock.
So do you guys think it's almost like the WWE pulling almost like the magician effect? And what I mean by that is them going, hey, look at this over here. Look at this over here. Look, big things happening.
It's been going on in the world of hockey this week, just to get off topic with the World Junior thing back in 2018 here in Canada. And they announced something about the NHL because a bunch of players took a leave of absence, and they announced, Utah might be into the team. So definitely they're trying to change the movement. But I think for WWE kids and TKO, you're about to hit your biggest time of the year. This is the time where you make your money.
This is a big season. This is like the holiday
season. Your stocks are going
WWE.
up here. You don't want them to hit.
Yeah, it's holiday season. Here. You got Rumble. You got the Chamber in Australia. You got Mania. I mean, this is like the prime time season for WWE. I mean, this is it.
In a way, it almost feels kind of calculated too. Like if I was,
why do you say that for? Why do you say that?
But for all the reasons we just said, if I was going to spill some really big tea to disrupt things, wouldn't you do it around the company's biggest time of the year?
Well, I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, we'll certainly come back and talk about these things. Yeah, jump in.
I think whenever you can make an announcement, like try to spill some tea, you definitely want to do it. I think just the timing of it just comes out perfectly. It couldn't come at a worse time on WM, because remember back in 2022, when the first scandal came out with Vince McMahon, it was a couple of weeks before SummerSlam, but really nothing too big was going on there. But this is your biggest money-making time.
Yeah, Randy, we were on the air. We spoke about that then, and we were kind of questioning, if I recall correctly, why WWE last year would bring Vince back into power. But there was a vote with the board of directors, and Vince, because he had, I guess, a quirk, if I remember correctly, Randy,
majority of shares.
Yeah, and even though, if I'm not mistaken, technically Triple H and Stephanie in their positions voted against him, and a majority voted at the board of directors against Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon was still able to come back into power. But the point was that for a year, Vince McMahon went as if nothing ever happened, and he was still around in the company up until they had this deal. And Randy, we spoke about this last year at this time about WWE going into a situation where they had to renew network deals. And Vince McMahon, no question, had to be at that negotiating table. He had to have been, right? Am I wrong?
Oh, 100%. Any big move WWE has made, Vince McMahon has had his handprint all over them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess we're going to have to find out for sure. If you're on Sportswire Radio, you can check us out anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on all of our platforms, and especially on sportswireradio.org. You can check us out there. We're an internet radio station. We've played shows like the Be More Talkative podcast, Randy Dillon's Hockey Fan Chat, and we just crossed over the 500 subscriber threshold platform on YouTube there. So we just hit 500 plus subscribers. I'd like to thank everybody that pushed us over the threshold these last couple of days. We had something, I think, like 17 subscribers alone the last 2 days, and over 100 in the last 2 months. So I want to thank everybody that's really been pushing Sportswire Radio. We've generated well over 4,000 views in less than a month alone just on YouTube. That's not counting our other platforms. So really want to thank everybody for their continued support. And I think 500 subscribers is a very big deal, because we really never pushed YouTube up until about 8 months ago. So of those 500 plus in the last 8 months, we got pretty much, I think, about 70% of them. So that tells you that people like Sportswire Radio. They like the job we're doing, and we're talking all things related here to the world of wrestling, because all wrestling matters. Well, technically, when it comes to things outside of WWE, you might say, with my guys Randy Dillon and Mr. TBK. All right, so let's talk about the TV deal. Obviously, the TV deal was supposed to be the original big news here. We haven't even gotten to the stuff inside the ring, but outside the ring, WWE signs this historic deal. It's 10 years. It's for $5 billion, and WWE is going to now have Netflix, and going to basically, outside the United States, Netflix is going to provide all the premium live shows, is going to provide all of the content related to WWE outside the U.S. and Peacock, WWE still has a deal with for another 2+ years. We also know that Netflix is going to basically take over the WWE network library. The WWE network outside of the U.S. is going to cease to exist in January of next year. We also know that the deal with Raw ends in October, September the 30th, or right around that time to be exact. And WWE still has to figure out where they're going to actually air Raw between October and January. So I guess in past tense, what do you guys think of this deal? And I guess in the current now with this whole thing that's happened with McMahon, I mean, what do you think here? And where do we go from here, I suppose? And so many other ways to go with this, guys.
So originally when I heard about the deal, it was revolutionary because it's really the first time a wrestling company is going to go to a streaming. And listen, a lot of sports we're talking about streaming. I think the NFL, they did YouTube, Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Yep, the NFL does Amazon Prime, and the red zone goes to YouTube now. Correct.
Yeah, and then I know the NHL does talk about them going to Amazon Prime.
NBA's talked about it. Major League Baseball. Yep, has it. Yep.
It really is amazing how WWE kind of a step ahead of all this and going to that streaming base where they started off with just the network and now they're doing live shows. And listen, the way the future how things are going, you're going to see what other wrestling companies are going to do because, listen, getting a streaming deal is much harder than getting, I think, a cable deal itself. And we'll see what AEW is going to do. Impact, I think a company like New Japan really is going to be interesting where if they can get a streaming deal, how much attention they're going to get because their audience is pretty huge there.
So what do you think about that, TBK? And I'll come back to a couple of different things there. But again, Netflix, 10 years, $5 billion. There is an opt-out, though, after 5 years, or Netflix can extend them for 10 more years. Netflix is obviously, if you're going by the numbers, in 247 million homes. We know also with this deal that Netflix will take over all of the WWE premium live events outside of the U.S. The U.S. premium live events will still be aired on Peacock until 2026. Then they have a decision to find there. Also, we know that Netflix will produce some WWE programming, I believe, outside of the U.S. that'll air. So, and the WWE network is also going to cease to exist. So you're going to see Netflix really have a huge footprint here with the WWE outside of America. But, what do you think of this deal as a whole?
Yeah, at first I wasn't, I wasn't too sure how I felt about it. But as Randy pointed out, the WWE has always prided themselves on being ahead of the curve, and doing this for them is just, to put it simply, it's a very WWE move. It's at this point, it kind of feels like they're going, why the hell not? But as long as it makes sense, as long as it does well, it can't hurt them in the long run. Now, for someone like me, I was actually looking forward. I was going to get rid of my Netflix. So now this forces me to have to keep it to watch Raw, which smart move on them, I guess.
Do you think they'll increase the fees? I believe it's the premium package is like $17 a month, maybe Canadian dollar. It's like 15. I mean, so do you think that they'll raise the package? Because I'm sure WWE is going to be the signature for their programming. What do you guys think on that?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think for me, I barely use Netflix. Only like a few shows I kind of watch or movies, right. But definitely for you have so many wrestling fans. For someone like before the network came out, you're paying $60 for a pay-per-view to order. Now it's a month here, I want to watch wrestling, or a couple of months here is a good time. Okay, keep it on and off. It really changes everything they can increase the fees. They know there's competition saying, listen, you want to watch Raw here, you got to watch NXT here or SmackDown here. But TBK, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they're leaving their thumbprint everywhere they can now. I mean, and why wouldn't they? I mean, like I said, with all the allegations, with everything going on right now, I mean, they want to take as much attention off of that as possible. So again, like I said, to me, it feels like they're pulling the magician move. They're going, hey, look, we got Netflix. Hey, look, The Rock's on The Rock's here, So, I mean, again, good on them, and hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, I don't know, though. I mean, obviously, there's some people that say, well, I want to see WWE's Raw signature show on USA, on a network, and there's always been that relationship. I would imagine SmackDown could replace Raw in that. So let me ask you a follow-up. And does that mean Raw is going to always air on Monday night still? Because Nick Khan had spoke about the fact that, WWE has some stiff competition with Monday Night Raw. You've got certainly the NFL for about 4 months out of the year. Mm-hmm. You've got other things that go on, the college football national championship. The NBA playoffs is a big deal, certainly, when it comes to the spring. The NHL playoff starts right around the same time. So now that you got this Netflix, because people can watch Netflix, right, anytime, or you can watch the show, you can keep the show, you can download it, whatever it is, right? Different than when you had it on USA. I mean, certainly, yes, Peacock. I'll come back to Peacock. I think they're in an interesting dynamic here also because they still are a partner in WWE. But I mean, does that mean that Monday Night Raw is going to still be Monday Night Raw, or what happens there, guys?
I think it's a wait and see type of move because if you've been looking at the NFL rating compared to W, the last few years that W ratings against the NFL, they've taken a massive hit, and this year they were really struggling.
And the NFL, I mean, the ratings are through the roof right now.
Crazy.
The NFL.
Exactly, especially with the writers' strike, they had the extra games on Monday, put them on ABC. It just took off. Amazing.
I think people were looking at Taylor Swift also a little bit.
Well, let's not get into that.
I don't know how much there is to look at, but that's a different conversation for a different time. I don't want to go too far into that, you know.
I think it's gonna be a wait and see type of thing. I think they'll try to keep it on Monday because I just think it's so Raw has been always synonymous with Mondays. They want to see can they keep it work, and I think if it doesn't work, then listen, we have the opportunity to change it.
Yeah, I think that's the real fascinating thing because you have Netflix, right, which people can watch anytime at any given moment. And WWE's had this stiff competition for all these years. I mean, the NFL, Monday Night Football, really, I would say over the past, I mean, it was always big growing up. But I mean, I think now it's kind of had a resurgence with the Manning cast. You've got certainly now doubleheader games. And certainly, you know, ESPN's really done a great job in kind of dressing that product. And then obviously the NBA and the NHL playoffs are also in the spring and summer, and that I think also gives them stiff competition. So you might wonder, what does that mean for Netflix and Monday Night Raw? And then I have to come back for a minute here and talk about Peacock. Now, Peacock still has a big deal with WWE because they have obviously the rights to all the premium live shows until 2026. Plus, they have with SmackDown on USA, which is a home of Peacock, and they're still producing WWE-related shows. And what do you think happens there? We're still with Peacock for at least 2 more years on all the premium live events and other produced shows. But you've got SmackDown. But then you've got the option of could Netflix come in and in the U.S. just broadcast all the premium live events. But conversely, WWE has had a long relationship with Peacock, a.k.a. NBC Universal USA. That goes back to before of us were probably even born, to the days of Saturday night's main event in the WWE in the 80s, back on the NBC-produced shows. And then we've seen the long relationship with USA even going back before Monday Night Raw, because it was primetime wrestling, it was all-American wrestling, all those USA shows back when USA was kind of a true sports company. It's come back to sports certainly in the past several years with obviously football, for those about be soccer in America, and racing, different things like that, and golf. But what do you think this means, gentlemen, for Peacock and their relationship with WWE?
I mean, I think at some point,
it's a tough one. It's a tough question to ask right now. Very tough one.
I think at some point, you know, you want to, if you're Netflix, you might want to go for the gusto and be like, hey, look, we've got Raw. We're getting access to the network library. We're getting to show the outside events. I could see a potential move on down the line and being like, hey, let's talk. You know what I mean? Trying to get the full McGillicuddy, I guess you could say, and just wrapping it all up under Netflix.
I think it's going to be whoever's going to pay the big enough dough.
Well, obviously now, I mean,
look
jump in.
Look how things are all spread off with USA, CW with NXT, and now Netflix on Raw, and then now the Peacock. It's like so many different pieces. It's like, I think W at this point saying, listen, if you want us on your thing, pay us the money and we'll go where you.
See, I'm always a believer, and tell me your thoughts, gentlemen. We'll say hello to Jules, NYC, and Ethan. We're pretty much answering the question you have here about Netflix and WWE. So we're pretty much answering that for you. And we'll go back to regular sports in about 20 or so minutes. We'll let the regular Sportswire guys come on here, and we're not going to wait a few minutes because I think that there's some interesting things to talk about. But, you know, is there a point? And I think I've always been a believer in diversifying. I've always been a believer that you shouldn't have everybody to have sole possession of your brand. WWE's always had, from what I remember, a relationship with multiple providers. We've seen it with SmackDown and Fox. We've seen it obviously with USA and Raw. We've also seen it in the past with other networks, whether it was syndication, whether it was different specials produced in different ways. Fox Sports, they've had a relationship with, and also outside the world with Turner. Bleacher Report is actually held and hosted WWE content on the TNT Turner, which we'll get to Turner in a few minutes. We're going to get to them because another brand, another company has a deal also coming up. But do you guys think that there might be something that, WWE has still always had a good relationship with Peacock. They've always worked well with USA. They re-up for SmackDown. And why not just keep them going and at least keep that line of communication open, and you still have Netflix for everybody else? What do you guys make of that?
It's tough. Because you're absolutely right, Tom. W has always been. They've never had kind of like one place here.
Look at the NFL, right? The NFL in America has games on CBS, NBC, Fox, now ABC, and ESPN. You look at the NBA, right? The NBA has had games on ESPN and TNT. The NHL has had games on TSN for those in Canada, like Randy, ESPN, and Turner. Always sports brands for the most part, as far as I can remember, and also Major League Baseball has games with Turner and also Fox. So there's always been, if WWE sees themselves not in the vein of like an AEW, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, they've always seen themselves as a brand kind of on par with those major sports brands. I would think then there's something about diversifying.
Yeah, it definitely, I would have to say, they've always done this, like the thing with ECW when it first came back.
Yep.
The bad version 2006 on Sci-Fi, and SmackDown, CW, I think UPT, and then Raw they had on Spike back to USA.
Yep.
Never
Raw
been
was
afraid.
on Spike. Raw was on TNN before then, and Sci-Fi you mentioned with ECW, correct?
Yeah. So I don't think W's never been afraid to say, "Hey, listen, we're fine going. If the money's right, if we feel the product good, we'll fine going somewhere. Not keeping our eggs in one basket."
And what do you make then of NXT and the CW? I think that's the most fascinating part of the deal here, because they're actually the one brand that's going to be on still a network. I mean, we talk about Raw, right? Raw is going to be now basically streaming. Okay, SmackDown's going to go on USA. We don't know what day SmackDown's going to air on. It's probably likely it's not going to stay on Fridays, because I think if Raw doesn't be on Mondays, I would have to think SmackDown's going to now become the Monday show. But again, like you said, wait and see. But you've got NXT here, which is actually on CW, we spoke about this a few months ago, Randy, is rebranding themselves, and they've gotten into sports. And I think it's really fascinating. They've got college football now, college basketball. They've gotten into some golf. They have an NFL produced show, and they've got NXT. And NXT, actually, to me, I think it's the most fascinating thing, because they're actually going on a network.
They've come a long way since they first went on USA 3.
It feels like Sportzwire Radio. When I first started 5 years ago, I was on a Skype call recording where my palms were sweaty, and I was basically recording on basically a big heavy sound mixer, and my microphone fell off, and I was on SoundCloud, and here we are. We've got 7 lights in the background. We've got Twitch. We've got LinkedIn. We've got YouTube, Twitter, SportswireRadio.org, a worldwide internet station. We've got thousands of listeners. We've got Jimmy Controversy Day. It's kind of like Sportswire almost. We're like the NXT of platforms.
Yeah, and listen, in NXT's rating, they keep going up. Like they've been consistent around the 700, 800, close to 900. They're going in the right direction.
It's to the point where Meltzer has to say, well, Dynamite beat them, and look at what they've had. I mean, so yeah, I think that's fascinating. Real quick, TBK, you have a thought on that with NXT and CW? I just think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think CW wants their piece of the pie. And anybody who's anybody worth anything right now is paying attention to WWE. And if they have their opportunity to get in on it, take it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think you're 1,000%, and that's why I think NXT is so fascinating, that they're the one brand that's actually going to be on a network, on basically an over-the-air network. They're the only one that's on an over-the-air network. The only wrestling brand, quote unquote, on an over-the-air network is NXT. Who would have guessed that even 2 years ago? Which leaves me then to AEW, which still doesn't have a contract. Now, if you listen to Eric Bischoff's 83 Weeks, I don't know if you guys listen to it or not, he does not seem to be bullish at all that AEW is going to stay on Warner Brothers Discovery. He seems to think that they're not going to get a deal because he thinks that their ratings have been stagnant. And sure, they have HBO Max. There's things there, but usually from his viewpoint on things and being in the TV business, that if you're not growing, you tend to kind of more or less not eventually become a commodity for TV and certainly streaming providers. What do you think happens here now with AEW?
I think if they don't get their attendance up, they're in problem. I think they had maybe under 2,000 fans at their episode of Dynamite. And listen, they had a good match between Edge and I can't remember his name, but it was a really good match.
I think Ken Mizuko
it was a very good match, but their attendance is not going. The crowd's not carrying.
2,600 is what they're averaging attendance-wise, counting premium and house show, whatever else through TV. It's 2,600 and change.
Yeah, the crowd's not going. The crowd's not going. You're not getting people there. You can't get your audience has been up and down. You can't get any consistency going. And listen, if you're TNT and Ted Turner, you're wondering like, what are we doing here? Because listen, your NBA, your deal with the NBA could be coming up soon. I know NHL
is coming up. They have one more year. They have one more season, and right now they're in the period where they're negotiating with them. They get the window, so they've got a big decision to make, and TNT has a big decision to make with AEW because AEW is without a network, and you can't survive without a network deal. You can't if you're not going to be on TNT and TBS. AEW can't survive as a brand. Now, certainly Sting's retirement, they're going to have a lot of tickets sold that they've actually opened up, more seats. They'll do great with that. But long term, they have issues with that. I mean, some would say that maybe this helps AEW because WWE leaving USA, maybe it would certainly leave the door open for them to go somewhere else. But I tend to think if they can't stay on Turner, I think they are in a lot of trouble. What do you guys both think on that?
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with, I would say with USA being the more major network, I don't see that happening. It's pretty much like we've all said. I mean, I think AEW is in real trouble right now. So what do they do? As you said, with Sting having the retirement match, that's going to bring a lot of old heads in, and a lot of people are going to get their nostalgia moment. But then, what kind of power move do you make?
I don't know. I mean, people
bring anybody in. Is there any excitement?
There's no momentum there. You look at this week of Dynamite. All of a sudden, Big Bill and Ricky Stark are going to defend the tag team title against Sting and Darby Allin, and the consensus: Sting and Allin going to win to challenge the Young Bucks at Revolution. And then it kind of just like, okay, you build Big Bill and Ricky Stark up to be a great tag team, and now all of a sudden you're just going to take the title away, and what do you do with them?
That's been AEW's problem for the better part of 2.5 years. You bring guys in, you push them, and then you don't know what to do with them. You bring guys in, and then they lose momentum, and that's kind of almost like it's a repeat. It's almost like rinse, wash, and repeat. It's just over and over and over. It's a never-ending cycle, and nothing seems to be any different with that. And I think it's a big problem, and obviously they're going to have to figure it out. But I will say one thing, gentlemen. We'll take them on Sportswire. Listen, if they get kicked off, if Warner doesn't want them and Turner doesn't want them, we'll take them on Sportswire. We can certainly,
I don't know if I can deal with Tony Khan whining, to be honest, with things don't go.
He might be with us on Friday shows. I can see Tony Khan saying, Tom, I really didn't like that you had Jimmy Controversy on. Tom, I really didn't like that Obey came on with the gun. Tom, I really didn't like when you had on Jake Carnage, Necro Daddy, talking about all those wrestlers that put Stardust up their butts. I could see it now. Boy, Tony Khan on Sportswire, you could see him nitpicking with all the British wrestlers. The Tribal Cheese, he didn't like what the Tribal Cheese said about James Barris. Oh, Tony Khan's going to talk about the fact that RPD, maybe he shouldn't have knocked down Anthony Ogogo, who he re-signed. I could see it now. Tony Khan would certainly be on the show, and he'd also be commenting. I could see it now. Tony Khan, maybe we shouldn't sign AEW. Maybe I shouldn't pull out my millions to make a bid. Because, people could say I could make a bid for AEW, but maybe I'm going to hold off on that. But obviously, in the interest of time, let's talk about the Rumble. And obviously, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, we will have a post-Rumble show. And I hope you gentlemen will join us because we're going to have a slew of people here from the platform. We're going to have Chris Craven, our coach in our Hall of Fame, alongside Randy. We're going to have, it looks like, Andy York from the Pipe Bomb, now Squared Circle Radio Podcast is going to be with us. We'll have a slew of guests. And I also, before I get a thought on that, want to say hello to my buddy, Mr. Justin Parsley, who just celebrated a birthday. Justin is the third member of our Hall of Fame. He is the first real wrestler. He's one half of the XCW Tag Team Champions, and he's here with us, and he says, all wrestling matters. Yes, thank you, Justin. Thank you for all of your support. I'm going to see you Tuesday on the show here with Festus Davis, our senior official in XCW, so have a good night. And it's early, Justin. I thought you'd be up and, DJing somewhere. I guess not. All right, but I hope you have a good night. But let's talk about the Rumble here, obviously, in the remaining time. What do you guys think? I know we talked about all that bad stuff outside the ring, but they still have a show tomorrow, WWE. And, what do you guys think tomorrow?
This is interesting for me because no one knows really what's going to happen because there's so much hype thing. We're going to get Rock versus Roman. Apparently, Rock even haven't signed a contract yet to wrestle.
But he's on the board of directors. I thought he wouldn't need one.
Well, Triple H has always had a second contract. Definitely. I think tomorrow night will tell a lot of what's going to happen, if Rock and Roman's going to happen or not. Is Cody or Rock going to happen? Who's going to face Seth Rollins, especially can Seth Rollins make it to WrestleMania? And is Roman going to keep the title? Because I don't think you need Roman to have the title versus him and Rock if they do go down that road.
What do you think, TBK? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, okay, so not to keep touching on it, but I'm gonna. If I'm the WWE right now, I'm trying to do everything I can to take all the negative attention away right now. If I'm Triple H, I'm getting on the phone and I'm hey, you guys got anything going on like around 8:00 tomorrow? You want to show up to the Rumble, make an appearance? You know what I mean? Like the Rumble has got to be huge tomorrow. It has to deliver. Of course, now we're getting maybe little mini teasers that Hogan is going to enter. And
God.
And it's like,
yeah, I mentioned it on the show with the Tribal Cheese, and obviously it was his 40th anniversary that took place on Tuesday. Monday it was mentioned on Raw. I mean, I guess Hogan could say one more match.
He's gonna make that walk down the ring, to be honest, before he that's my concern.
It's WWE. I mean, I guess what better way to take off the negativity, I suppose, by bringing Hogan back. I mean, the last we saw Hogan in a ring had to have been, I think, in TNA back in 2012, not counting like the small little thing they had with him and Brock Lesnar and maybe a punch or two here and there. I'm trying to remember maybe WrestleMania when Sting wrestled Triple H back in WrestleMania. I want to say, was that 31 or 31? I mean, so we really haven't seen much of Hogan, and he's 70. So I don't even know, like, what that would really bring at this point. I mean, Hogan has said he wants one more match. I don't know who you'd put him in the ring with at this point. I mean,
Mercedes Moné, I think tomorrow we'll get our answer. Will she be coming out? Because
what about AJ Lee? What about everybody talks about AJ Lee? I mean,
you just follow the old moniker, never say never. And like I said, they have got to deliver something tomorrow, something unexpected, something big, something that we're not, ready for. I mean, I just don't know what that could be. So I'm racking my brain.
TBK, it gets me wondering what you're saying. Does they go down that road and just get MJF to show up at the Rumble?
Well, maybe the dogs are coming in the Rumble. Maybe the dogs are coming.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
No, does MJF show up in the Rumble just to make an appearance? Doesn't mean
Bischoff was talking. Real quick, and we'll get the Sportswire guys here in about 5 minutes. I know they're waiting. I know Rob Maraska's waiting to talk Hall of Fame, and I'm TBK. You can go after this if you want. That's fine. But I mean, obviously, Bischoff talked about the fact he thinks that MJF, it wouldn't really do him the best to kind of go to WWE right now because his value might mean more to AEW, as crazy as it sounds, because who do they really have left? And there's still that storyline. So, I mean, MJF, I don't know if I see that possible at this point in the Rumble.
Well, you know what? If you're MJF, you either care about Tony Khan or you don't. And if I'm MJF, I don't give a damn about Tony Khan. I'm looking out for me.
Well, that's an obvious one.
The other ones we're looking at the prize entries in the Rumble. Sonya Deville make a return. Are we going to see a Braun Breaker make his debut? Look like Trick Williams is going to show up. And listen, the rumor that Stone Cold might come up. I don't think that's possible, but you never know. And then
Stone Cold, I get, in a way, as crazy as it sounds, I get the Hogan point, because Hogan has not had finality in his career, as crazy as that sounds. But Stone Cold, to me, he proved that he could still do it for what it was against KO a couple years ago. And I mean, I don't know what Stone Cold would really be proving at this point.
And I think as well, you got your big names in the Rumble. You got your CM Punk. You got your Cody Rhodes. Bad Bunny wouldn't be surprised if he makes an appearance.
Yeah, Bad Bunny. Okay, I'll give you that.
And then you'll have maybe the return of Sami Zayn, who can make an appearance as well. But it's going to be interesting, because I'm really interested to see two things: when the Fatal 4-Way is going to happen, and who's going to win the Rumble. Because on Raw, it was really interesting the way they went to kind of plant that seed. We could get Gunther versus Seth Rollins, Cody versus CM Punk, and then Roman versus Rock. I think Sports Illustrated published something saying these are the three matches, and they did a retraction on it. So it's very tight-lipped right now.
Yeah.
And obviously, you mentioned Gunther and Brock Lesnar, and I mean, I don't mention him in this. So
I don't think he's showing.
What happens there?
I don't think he's showing anymore. Oh, sorry, TBK, go.
No, you're fine. Apparently, he got pulled. Apparently, Brock got pulled because of the allegations against Vince. So, what do they do with Gunther now? Like I said, like if I'm one of the top guys, I'm sitting down tonight and I'm making some decisions. Like you got to be on it, because it's right around the corner at this point.
Yeah, I think Brock Lesnar, there can't be any plans for Brock Lesnar because of what could happen here with this. I agree 1,000% on that. And before we move on, and one more time, again, right after the Rumble, we will have a Sportzwire Radio. So if you're here and you're with us, we will have a post-Rumble show. We will talk all about this here. So I want to make sure everybody knows that here. And before we move on, let the Sportswire regular guys come on here. You know what would be amazing, Tom Bryce? Okay, you tell me, Ethan. If John Cena comes back and throws out CM Punk, and the final four would be Gunther, Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, and John Cena. Well, Brock Lesnar, even, I want to remind you, right? You might want to go check Twitter, might want to check Facebook, or even Google Vince McMahon right now, and Google a woman, Janelle Grant, whatever you want to say it at this point. And you'll probably see Brock Lesnar's name somewhere in there. So he's out. John Cena is basically saying that he's 45 years old and is near the end of his career. And we just saw him basically get thumped and trounced by Solo Sikoa. He's out. Cody Rhodes and Gunther, yes. Okay, those are two names. I'll give you that. But the other two names, you might want to certainly scratch those out. Kind of like if you played the lotto, you had a quarter and you were basically, scratching your numbers. Scratch them off and find two other people. But it would be amazing, 2 of the 4. I'll give you 2 of the 4. How about that? But, all right, gentlemen. So I guess you guys, I think TBK, you're going to probably go because we're going to talk Baseball Hall of Fame. And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow as well. And I also want to thank everybody one more time here. 500 plus subscribers we just hit on YouTube, and I think it was so poetic because on our 5-year anniversary we had 500 subscribers on YouTube, and it was really a rush. And I was basically like, "Oh, am I going to get it?" And that's kind of been the week it was here on Sportswire Radio. I mean, what a last couple of weeks we've had on Paige Palazzolo, the head coach of the United States Women's Amputee Soccer Team, Luke Leyland last weekend, who's the first British fighter, a non-African fighter, to have ever fought in Gombe at the African Warriors Fighting Championship. We have Jimmy Controversy Day today. We have James Barris, who's our first pro wrestling promoter inducted into our Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. Tribal Cheese has his own day, and maybe he's going to go on the TBK podcast. Maybe we'll bring him on the Hockey Fan Chat because the Tribal Cheese loves to talk. And we had this guy, Necro Daddy, Jake Carnage, Chris Levitt. It would be the talk of the wrestling world in England. I mean, he had everybody still talking about that. So what a last couple of weeks on Sportswire Radio. Oh, by the way, DJ Walbert was here, who's doing paranormal. I mean, we've had so many great shows. The IMF boys, Omen and Soldier, were here. It's just been an amazing last couple of weeks. Jack Delta had his own day. I mean, you could just, the list goes on and on and on. But I got to let these Sportswire guys on. I see a couple of them waiting here. I got Rob Maraska and Justin Gianelli. They're dying to talk the Baseball Hall of Fame. But Randy and TBK, I'm going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts, and anything else you might want to plug.
Always a pleasure, Tom. Definitely will be on the Rumble. Before I know we won't let the other guys on, just wanted to share an interesting fact because Patrick Waugh did take over at the New York Islander head coach. I was taught in university by his cousin.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was a cool experience. I never got to
who was
meet
his
the guy.
cousin?
Her
Where
name
did you
was
go? Where did you go,
It was
McGill?
in Alberta at State. So
Oh,
she was
wow.
teaching there, and that was a pretty cool side. So
Did you try to ask her to come on the hockey fan chat?
I wasn't doing the hockey fan chat there, but I did ask to meet him or get something from him a few times.
That would have been funny. And teaching in Alberta, nonetheless. I
Yeah,
mean, Patrick was so synonymous with the Canadians. That's a really fascinating story there. All right, so we can follow you at Randy Dillon, Randy DHIL on Instagram and Twitter. Anything else you want to share with us? Anything? By the way, phenomenal show with the hockey fan chat. What is the Pittsburgh Penguins fan? You guys it was like, that was a great show, by the way.
Yeah, no, definitely give credit up to Nick who came on the show. We'll definitely
better
get him
than
back.
Jen Shefferow when you had Jen on.
With hockey, listen, if you're a fan of the LA Kings, you are struggling. If you're a fan of the Edmonton Oilers, you are happy. If you're a fan of the New York Islanders, Washington Capitals, Pittsburgh Penguins, New Jersey Devils.
If you're a fan of the New York Islanders, if you're a fan of New Jersey Devils, you're basically right now kind of like my Amazon performance in my mutual fund. Now, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you're conversely like JP Morgan Chase in my mutual fund right now. So one's down, one's up.
And yeah, if you're any team in the Metro, you're fighting for a spot, you better pick it up because there's one spot available. The team, the Atlantic, are on a run. So if you don't figure it out soon, you're going to be out of a spot.
I think the Penguins are in trouble. I think the Islanders are going to be lucky to finish 500 at the end of the season. And I think the Devils... The Devils are going to be tough. I think the Devils are going to probably be right on that line, and you're going to wonder about Lindy Ruff for sure. And we'll see you tomorrow for sure in TBK. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say with us before we see you tomorrow night? Obviously, looking forward to you. You better be getting on the Tribal Cheese on your podcast. You better be putting that back up there. So, anything else you want to plug for us, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you as always, Tom. Randy, good to see you again, brother.
Thank you for making the banner for us. Thank you one more time for that banner you made. I'll make sure to get the better angle of it, but I do appreciate that. You did a great job.
No problem. As Tom said, going to be having the Tribal Cheese himself, Mr. Logan, on probably sometime after the Rumble. Very excited for that one. And yeah, these next 24 hours, especially with the Rumble and everything going on, WWE is going to be very, very paramount, very exciting. And then, of course, on Sunday, 3 p.m., Lamar Jackson takes on Taylor Swift.
I think like 90% of them. I think real quick, and I know these guys will come on and talk about it. I think 90% of America is probably rooting for the Ravens.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would let you know what I'm pulling for my boys. That goes without saying. And man, go Lions, please.
I know the Lions.
Go Lions.
The team that won 2 playoff games this year, and in their existence since 1957, won 1 playoff game. I mean, you got to think about that. And I've been talking about the Lions on Sportswire for over 2 years, and yeah, that would be nice. I think the Lions have a little bit more of an uphill battle than the Ravens do because the Ravens are at home and they've got the momentum. But yeah, at least we could say I would certainly hope that we won't have to deal with Taylor. One of my buddies, Daniel Slavin, a big-time listener of mine since I buried my first day doing this, was like, please, I don't want the Chiefs to win. I mean, he was like texting me, please don't pull for the Chiefs. But that's how a lot of people feel. But yeah, we'll definitely check out all that great stuff. Thank you so much, guys. And Ethan, yes, we congratulate you for getting us to 500 subscribers. Gentlemen, I'll see you guys tomorrow night. I got to talk with these other guys. They've been waiting patiently, and thank you for all that you do. We're going to make a hockey line change, Randy, as you like to say. I'm going to change a couple of guys here. We're going to bring a couple of guys back on. I feel like I might be Patrick Waugh for a minute, but we're going to move you guys off and bring these guys on because they're already on. And, gentlemen, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
All right, that was none other than Randy Dillon and TBK, the host of the Hockey Fan Chat and the Be More Talkative podcast. They'll be back here tomorrow after our Royal Rumble 2024 this year in WWE. Okay, well, we couldn't move it any further. Okay, gentlemen, we're here. We're obviously getting ready to talk all things related here to the world of some sports. I'll get into baseball, football. Maybe I'll bring Ron Franklin on in a little while. I don't talk a lot about the whole thing because I got 3 guys here, though I feel like half my wrestling audience is going to be like, baseball Hall of Fame, time to move on. But that's been the last couple of weeks on Sportswire. The platform certainly going on, but we are a wrestling station. But, for a little while, we like to give other people an opportunity. And, gentlemen, Baseball Hall of Fame, let's get some reactions. And, Rob Maraska, you're up first because you probably saw all these guys on this ballot play. But, what's your reactions? We see 3 guys get in. It looked like we might have had 4 guys, and there was a chance we might have even had 5 guys. But the guys that get in, Joe Mauer, who gets in by the skin of his teeth, Todd Helton, who also gets in by a narrower margin than probably people would have expected after we saw the public ballots, the first half of them released. And to no one's surprise, Adrian Belcher, but the big surprise, who misses by 5 votes. Now, I want to be quoted on this because I mentioned this, Chris, on your podcast, and I mentioned this on the Pinstripe Chronicles podcast. I actually said that Billy Wagner would probably miss or make the Hall of Fame by somewhere around 10 votes. And he missed by 5. So I was pretty much about a point off or a point on, depending on where you see it. But Rob Maraska, for you, give me your thoughts on the Hall of Fame and Billy Wagner coming up a little short.
Well, after what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks, there's no shock. Billy Wagner, you know what? Hoping that he would get in, missed it by 5 votes. You hit it on the head, really. So close. But so... hopefully he gets in. Sheffield was right under him.
63%, and kind of was at 74-ish, right, when the half was released. And he fell, obviously, he dropped a lot, in the non-public ballots. Yep.
Yeah, but Beltry, 95.1%, 400 home runs. It's no shock. He didn't, he didn't start off his career that great. He didn't get better until, his 30s when he was on Texas.
Well, he also played a long time, and he was one of those guys that if you look at his career, I mean, he really was consistent. I mean, he had some great years, some down years, but he had 3,000 plus hits. I think that there was no doubt about it. But, Joe Mauer, I think, is one of the more debatable first ballot ones we've ever had. And, certainly the support as well. He won 3 batting titles. Only 8 catchers have won a batting title. Or 8 times a catcher has won a batting championship. And sure, okay, we spoke a lot about this. I spoke about it on your show, Chris, and I spoke about it on Bobby and certainly Donald and Rob Barros' show, the Pinstripe Chronicles, when we inducted them in the Hall of Fame. But, Joe Mauer, I mean, I think that he was take it or leave it to me on he's the first ballot. I'll get to you guys in a second. I guess that was a minor surprise, certainly debatable first ballot. I guess if you would have told me Joe Mauer would get in eventually, I'd be okay with it. But, I don't really know if he was a first ballot Hall of Famer still.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know about it. I guess it's just because of his stats, catching, lifetime.
Won an MVP, hit 360. Yeah. I mean, he had some great years, but, he dropped off as a first baseman. His numbers really, as a first baseman, weren't much.
Yeah, and I didn't, and I still don't see him as a first time, Hall of Famer, but he is, so what are you going to do? I'm not shocked anymore about anything. And let's remember also that Jim Leland is going to be inducted also.
Yep, Veterans Committee, right?
Yeah, which, that's definitely well-deserved. So,
yeah. Let me ask you a follow-up before I get to Justin. Billy Wagner's last year is on the ballot next year. Does he get in?
I think he gets in. It was only 5 votes, so I think...
He only moved up 2%. It was about 2.5% he moved it. Now, if he gets another 2%, he's in, but he lost 3 people, by the way. 3 people last year voted for him, didn't vote for him this year.
I know. That
makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
And then there was, 4 people or 2 people that left the ballot blank?
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, come on. Leaving it blank, all this other crap. Just vote, do what you're supposed to do. Or you know what? Then you shouldn't be able to vote. It's ridiculous. And like you said, I don't understand how 3 people could vote for him last year. So last year he was a Hall of Famer, but this year, not. Makes no sense.
Yeah, these guys certainly have their opinions, and certainly that's why they're anonymous voters or don't like to keep their ballots public. Justin Gianelli, I mean, at least we had 3 names this year. Could have been 4, maybe some even people say 5, but I think 4 would have been really nice in addition to Leland. So give me your reactions on Beltre, Helton, Mauer, makes it by the skin of his teeth, and conversely, the other way around, Wagner misses it by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Adrian Beltre. I mean, you talked about it before, how his career really turned on when he got to Texas, right? Yeah, he did have some really good years with the Dodgers. Got that
48
big
home run
contract.
year, yeah.
Yeah, 48 homers in 04. He got the big contract with the Mariners, but he was nothing more than an above average player with a great glove, because he was a great defensive third baseman. That's for sure. And then he had that 1 year in Boston, and then parlayed that into a big contract with Texas. And he goes to Texas, has a Hall of Fame career. I mean,
yeah, he had some great years there. Part of the World Series team, and really was an anchor there. Really good, solid years there. Yep.
3,100 hits, 477 number of home runs, 1,707 RBIs, an OPS of 819. I mean, altogether, you add in a 5-time Gold Glove winner, 2-time Platinum Glove winner. I mean, he really, minus MVPs and a World Series, I mean, he really had it all. I mean, he was a great player, and you knew how great he was when you watched him.
And he was also, teammates loved him. You hear everybody. I was listening to Jim Tracy, his former manager, talk about how big he was in that 2004 season. Certainly those Texas teams. And, he was a guy that really morphed into being a clubhouse leader, and people would talk about his personality and just,
I personally
Andrews under his wing. Yep.
Yeah. And I personally think that's a big reason why the Dodgers got to the playoffs in 04. They were not the 04 Dodgers was not a great roster.
Not at all.
They somehow, they lost, I think, in the division series to the Cardinals or something like that. But, they were not a great team. They really weren't.
No, they would. Then it was kind of a surprise that they, won the division, because the Giants still had Barry Bonds, who had 232 walks that year. So you were thinking, okay, Giants will repeat. They were on the 0-2-0-3 run still. Yep. But they have a great run. He has a great season, and he's certainly, like you said, Seattle really didn't have the power. He later on had a couple of okay years there. Goes to Boston, has a great year there, but in Texas really becomes like this locker room leader. Was on that World Series team, takes players under his wing, and becomes just, one of the most popular and beloved players, I think, of our generation after that.
Well, for sure. For sure. He's going to have a huge celebration of fans. And he's got the most hits by a Dominican-born player.
Yep.
Right. As for Todd Helton, to me, this is a couple years overdue. I mean, the numbers that Todd put up, I know people will say gets inflated by Coors Field, but he got drafted there, and he obviously made the choice to stay there. But everybody gets that there. So I mean, I get it. He gets the 81 games there. I never thought that it should have hurt his candidacy that much.
I think what hurt him was that the end of his career, he didn't end like Beltre ended his career as a very productive player still. But what you remember from Helton those last few years, the power had dropped significantly, the batting average had dropped, and he had kind of become, not the powerful hitter you saw in the first half of his career. Although the numbers, like you said, they're still right there. 316 average, 2,500 plus hits, 400 plus home runs. The numbers were there still.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
under 400 home runs, I think, right?
369. Yeah.
They're like 1,400 RBI or something like that. 1,400 plus RBI.
1,406. Yep.
There you go.
1,406 led the league in hits into that 2000 season by Todd Helton was a season for the ages.
Yeah, he was going into I think the last month right around 390 or something like that, if I recall.
372 average, 42 homers, 59 doubles, 147 RBIs, 216 hits. That was one of 2 times in his career when he had over 200 hits. But I mean, he was a 300 machine, a 300 average machine. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. all he would do was get hits, 2,500 hits. He really had a great career.
No question.
And I'm extremely happy for him. Joe Mauer, I loved watching Joe Mauer as a kid. Personally watching him, I did get first ballot Hall of Fame vibes. I mean, to be a catcher and put up the numbers he did, speak for itself, right? And you could kind of put him and Buster Posey in that same light, except Posey has the World Series and Joe doesn't. But when you look at their careers, they're kind of a similar arc to them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mauer, though, has a far longer reach, and I think that his statistics are far, certainly, surpassing Posey's. But Posey, like you said, in that short amount of time, has got 3 World Series, postseason hero, and
he won MVP as well.
Yeah, and his impact is certainly felt more than his statistics, and that might be his case. I think Mauer, look, I think he would have got in. I think Posey will probably get in if Mauer got in on the first ballot.
Yeah.
And Wagner, I know you said, Justin, you think he gets in no problem next year. You still think he gets in no problem next year or what?
I thought he was going to get in this year. I really did think we were going to get 4 this year. Obviously, he fell 5 votes short. I think next year is probably a 3-person class as well. I mean, because you have
Ichiro.
Because you get Sabathia and Ichiro on the first ballot next year, and then I think you're gonna get Wagner mixed in there. Because other than that, I mean,
maybe get Andrew Jones.
Maybe Andrew Jones.
He's got to go in.
I agree.
But I don't know if he's going to jump from 61.6. Honestly, though, I don't know if he jumps from 61.6 to 75.
I think he's going to have to wait another 2 years, and and I think that he's
so next year. So next year will be year 8 for Andrew Jones. I actually am not 100% sure he gets 14% in the next 3 years. That's a jump.
That's a travesty.
That's going to be rough.
I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? I mean, 61 and a half. I don't know, Chris. Again,
these one guys. The watch is going to be Carlos Beltran, honestly.
Well,
he should get in too.
He's going to get in.
Definitely.
And he was at 57.1 in his third.
He moved up. Yeah, he moved up 10%. And Chris, obviously, I would assume on next week's show with the Talking Rivals, you guys will talk about it. I have the liftoff just which I'm saving because I've been on 3 times today on Sportswire Radio, so I will play it for sure tomorrow into Sunday. But what did you think? Anything differently? I mean, than what these guys had to say on this year's class of the Hall of Fame? Before I give a plug.
No, I'm basically agreeing with you guys. I mean, I'm not surprised Mauer's first ballot. I'll be honest. When I watched him play. When he was a catcher, obviously, when he's a first baseman, his last 5 years or whatever it was,
he dropped
average first baseman. He had the concussion issues. That's why he had to switch over. But when he was a catcher, he was easily the best catcher in the league at the time. And he was arguably in the conversation. He was in the conversation for best player overall in the league at the time.
He won an MVP. I think that's a thing that really gives him a feather in his cap.
Yeah,
he won MVP.
So to me, it doesn't. To say he's not a first ballot, I mean, I think he deserves to get in. So whether it's first, second, or third, he should get in. I think Wagner gets in next year, like you say. I think it's horrible that Andrew Jones is not in the Hall of Fame yet. And then when you look back, since Willie Mays got inducted, there's only been one center fielder since then, and that's Ken Griffey. You're going to tell me
that was an obvious. But I think I brought it up. I don't know if I brought it up on your show, but I think I brought it up on Bobby's show when I inducted them into the Hall of Fame. That to me, Jim Edmonds should have got more consideration.
Absolutely, Kenny Lofton. You're gonna tell me Kenny Lofton wasn't a Hall of Famer?
But you know what? But you know what it is, right? Mauer got in because he was beloved in the media, right? He was beloved, right? Yes. Guys like Sheffield. Guys like Lofton, even Edmonds, they weren't either playing in big markets or they weren't liked. And I think that's what it is. With writers, it's a popularity contest.
Ken, too. That's another one. And by the way, just to go back to Todd Helton's great season, he was 5th in the MVP that year, that he had that great year. Jeff Kent was the MVP that year.
Yeah, that was when the Giants.
And Barry Bonds was second. Yeah. But it's amazing. When you look at Helton's numbers, you're like, how did this guy not win MVP? But like you said, to me, it makes no sense. Only one center fielder since Willie Mays has been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
how is that possible?
I think Jones. I think Jones.
Did Willie Mays set the bar that high? So it's like, he's not as good as Willie Mays.
Well,
so
I mean, look at how many great center fielders we've had. Look, I think that Jones will probably get in at the last year in the ballot, but he ain't getting in next year.
No, he's teetering right now. I'm 50-50 whether or not he actually gets in. I don't know. Maybe it's my Met bias. I don't know what it is. Something just doesn't feel right with putting him into the Hall of Fame.
It's because he dropped so much at the end of his.
Yeah, but his first 10 years, the guy was a Hall of Famer.
I think Bobby Tats.
I never felt like. Yeah. Also, too, watching Andrew Jones, I never felt like he was one of the best in the game. Sure, best in the game defensively, absolutely. He was one.
Who
of the
was a better center fielder defensively that you guys have seen?
Well,
you're older, so
defensively, I'm not arguing.
No, I'm just saying he'll tell me. He can't tell me many guys. You could tell me. I never seen Willie Mays, so I can't say Willie Mays. But other than Willie Mays, I mean, who's been better in the last 50 years? Defensively.
How we just talk about Jim Edmonds? Jim Edmonds is a huge.
He was great, and I think he should get in too. I don't know why certain positions they don't put these guys in. I think second base is getting like that too because Jeff Kent's not in. That makes absolutely no sense.
Jeff Kent's an abomination. I think it's an absolute abomination.
Chris, I think Jeff Kent is just, the problem he had with the media.
I agree.
Listen, I still think it's an abomination that Chase Utley got 29% of the vote.
That's why Jim Rice took forever to get in.
I'll say it again. Chase Utley got 29% of the vote. I didn't see where he was a Hall of Famer.
No, I didn't think a very good player. Yeah, and a guy who I'd won on my team, but not a Hall of Famer.
Here's my problem with the ballot. And I'm not saying either of these players are Hall of Famers because they're not. But you can't tell me there's much of a difference between Chase Utley and David Wright as a player. And the fact that the fact that Chase Utley gets that much more votes. I'm not saying either getting in the Hall of Fame. They're not. David and Chase are not going to get into the Hall of Fame.
Although, if you heard the radio this week, they were saying, well, Chase Utley, Steve Phillips said he got off to a great start. 29% the first year. You could move up. 29%. Think about it.
He's not going to jump that high. He's not going to jump that far.
His point was Tim Raines went from 14% his first year in the ballot into the Hall of Fame. That was his point, and that ain't a bad point. Listen, Andrew Jones didn't start where he is right now. He's at 61. I agree with you on Jones. I think Jones is far more debatable. But listen, Utley and Wright aren't Hall of Famers. There's, to me, no question about it.
But my main issue is how are they so stark? There's such a stark difference in the voting. Like David Wright got 6-point-something %.
6.9,
yeah. Like so he's.
I think it's got to be two things. One guy played in Philadelphia, the other guy played in New York, and one guy won a World Series and was a great postseason player. And the writers might be putting that into stock. I mean, I even heard guys say that Jimmy Rollins should get more of a discussion in the Hall of Fame because he won an MVP and. If you look at his stats in this era, they're pretty good too. But I feel like again, it becomes the Hall of Fame of the the very good at this point. It's the very good. And it really all these
that's
guys.
What it turned out to be.
Yeah, all these guys. Mark Burley. All right, Mark Burley. He was good. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer.
Definitely not.
Bobby Abreu. Hanging around.
A lot of players. Once you reach 10 years of service time, if you have quite enough credentials, you're going to be put on the ballot.
Very good, consistent pitcher.
Yeah, listen, and Mark Burley maybe
never really an ace.
You know what? Maybe Mark Burley gets a second look because of the fact that in this era, 150 wins is like 300 wins. So maybe he gets a push. But Mark Burley, like you said, wasn't a Hall of Famer. Let me ask you guys about two names that I don't think will get in, but they certainly had the numbers. But obviously, there are certainly writers holding things they might have did off the field against them. But there's no question the back of their cards say that they're Hall of Famers, and that's Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez, both hovering in the mid-30s. Where do you go with them?
Listen, I've always said these guys should be in the Hall of Fame, right? The steroid guys, they should be in. Yep. Why they're not, obviously, you said because of the steroids, they should be in, and on their plaque, it should say they were, possibly steroid or whatever you want to write, Obviously, for Manny Ramirez, he actually got suspended, so he's in a whole different, part of that. A-Rod as well got suspended. Yeah. So, but, I mean, Bonds never got suspended. He never tested positive. Clemens, same thing. Clemens went to court, right? Yep. Well, remember when he went to court and fought all that stuff, and he
with Brian McNamee,
innocent. So those guys should be in. The other guys, you want to make the argument, they got suspended, they were caught, all that stuff. You could make that argument, but
I just think it's fascinating that Ortiz got in no problem,
right?
But these other guys,
well, because what Rob said earlier, the writers loved him, right? Everybody
played in
loved Big Papi.
Boston.
If you weren't a Yankee fan, you loved Big Papi. Trust me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's for sure. One of the more universally well-liked figures in baseball in recent times.
I love him now on TV.
Yep.
But I mean, the fact that Gary Sheffield is not in is an absolute joke.
Stupid. It is a joke.
Yeah, I mean, Sheffield. I think I was.
The problem is I get where we're coming from in the fact that we went through a period of the steroid era where guys became, some of these numbers have been questioned, but you can't write the history of baseball without a guy like Gary Sheffield, a guy like Barry Bonds, a guy like McGuire, Sosa. All these guys are getting.
Hey, listen, Palmeiro, they took him off the ballot, for obvious reasons.
And you know what? Here's the other thing. Their numbers are in the record books, right? Barry Bonds is the home run leader.
Whether you like it or not, whether you choose to admit it or not, Barry Bonds is the factual home run leader.
Right. And they are Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. Like they honor
Barry
them.
Bonds. I'm sorry, Chris. Barry Bonds, before all this steroid stuff, Barry Bonds was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, listen, these guys should definitely be in the Hall of Fame, and we'll have to see. And, again, other names out there, Bobby Abreu, kind of hanging around, probably doesn't get in, but he's, I think that the writers keep people on the ballot to kind of have that discussion, and that's certainly in up to them. Torrey Hunter is at 8+%, another guy that, really isn't going anywhere, but, had a really good career, but again, a lot of these guys are very good, and I think that that's an issue in itself. And if you're on Sportswire Radio, you can check us out anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. And I'm here with some of the guys here from Sportswire Radio, including Justin Gianelli, host of the Baseball Banter, Rob Maraska, Hall of Famer on Sportswire Radio. He was in our 9th member of group of the first class. Also, Chris Pizzea, 12th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, co-host of the Talking Rivals and the Liftoff Jets. And if you want to check us out, we're on YouTube at Sportswire Radio 6579, and we just hit 500 subscribers. So if you've subscribed like a Joe Dell or anybody else, tell your friends. Keep us growing. Keep us going. Continue to support the movement. We're over 2,000 followers on my personal Facebook page, 700 plus on my Sportswire Radio Facebook page. We're up to 1,400 followers on Instagram. We're also have a worldwide internet radio station where you can hear shows like the Talking Rivals, Baseball Banter, Liftoff Jets via the Listen Live button at sportswireradio.org. And if you have a podcast, if you want to play some music, or if you want to have your chance to be heard around the world on the radio, you get in touch with me. I'll make your opportunities happen and some, and we do that free of charge on behalf of the community. We give people an opportunity to let themselves be heard, and certainly we've had a number of shows come back to the rotation. We've had the Squared Circle radio host guys, Randy York and Chris Belcher and Jared Justice come back. Their show aired throughout the week on Sportswire Radio. The Sit Down Marks came back. We also had the Grappling with Canada. We have more names going into the Hall of Fame later this weekend. We have our guy DVG, that voice guy, over 75,000 subscribers on his YouTube page, is inducted Sunday night. We've also got Cyrus the It Factor, who's the global champion in DBW, to be inducted Monday night, 9:30. Same time, same bad channel. The Bitcoin billionaire Chase Wakefield to get in, and Justin Gianelli, he's going to join the group next Friday, so we'll give him a little certificate, give him a photo, and put him on the website with his Baseball Banter show, and he'll join the rest of our inductees, including James Barris, our first professional wrestling promoter, inducted last night, UK time, into the Hall of Fame. Also, Luke Leyland, last weekend inducted, who was the first guy that ever fought in Dambe outside of Africa in the Kings of Dambe African Warriors Fighting Championship event 2 weeks ago out there in Nigeria. He was inducted as our final member of our second class. And to kick off our third class earlier this week, we had on the Pinstripe Chronicle guys, a.k.a. Bobby Tats, Uncle Tats, although Bobby has reminded me he's now Uncle Tats, no longer Bobby Tats. I've known Bobby so long, I still keep calling him Bobby Tats, and he's on Bobby Tats anyway on a Hall of Fame ballot. But also Rob Barros and Donald Stewart. It was a pleasure to be on their podcast, and there are other podcasters, and we will induct on from our radio station, but you got to give me a chance right now. We have a lot of demand right now on Sportswire Radio. I'm trying to meet all of it, and we've had a lot of big things happen these past couple of weeks. I want to thank everybody that's helped us get to 5 years, and it's been quite a last couple of weeks. We had, like I said, Paige Palazzolo. If you haven't got a chance to check out the interview, please do that on our YouTube page. She's the head coach of the United States women's amputee soccer team. What a story, what a journey. Luke Leyland was on last week. We had on James Barris yesterday. We had Necro Daddy, a.k.a. Jake Carnage, Chris Levitt, which got us, I think it's still going, almost 300 views on YouTube. We had DJ Wahlberg, who's hunting paranormal. We've had on so many different guys, Omen Black and Soldier GP. And today, what an honor it was to have on Jimmy freaking Controversy, who works, oh, by the way, for the 7th biggest wrestling company in the world. And we named it Jimmy Controversy Day. We want to thank Jimmy because on his Pro Wrestling Venom channel, he actually mentioned Sportswire Radio. So if you're tuning in for the first time and I see people coming on to the dial here, thank you so much for that. Thank you to Jimmy for him sharing that he has been in our Sportswire Radio shows and also recognizing the fact his certificate was given. Also, the Tribal Cheese, who's got 1,300 plus subscribers on YouTube. We had a day for him. So a lot of great talent that has been here. We have more talent ahead. Also want to give a plug to our buddy Joe Dell. Joe's got this Metal Hall of Fame. It's the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame that he's working on something pretty big for, and we're going to plug that right here for us because we got it here coming up at metalhalloffame.org. He's got this Metal Across America series for the Metal Hall of Fame. You can check it out here for each state, and Joe's been working on that for quite a while, so it's a pretty cool thing. metalhalloffame.org. And Joe, you got to tell all your heavy metal friends to come and subscribe to Sportswire Radio. So you got to make sure you tell them YouTube at Sportswire Radio 6579. So make sure you get the word out there. You got this great metal merchandise. Make sure you support it. Also want to thank our buddy one more time, TBK, for this great banner. Thank you. He's the host of the Be More Talkative podcast. Okay, so we got all those plugs out of the way. But baseball offseason is still going, and couple of different moves here and there, gentlemen. And Rob Moroska, I know in the interest of time, I'm going to go to you because we got about maybe 10 or 15 more minutes in baseball, and I got to work a little bit of football in for the remaining of show. And what else? I have a voice left. But give me your thoughts on some other moves that have happened here in baseball's free agency this past week.
Okay, well, what is going on with the Mets? Are they punting next season?
The Mets off season. Don't give me 5 minutes. I gotta go shotgun. Don't give me 5 minutes on the Mets off season.
I'm not. But I wanted to talk about real quick. David Robertson signing with the Rangers. Another one goes to the Rangers. They like ex-Mets. I wish the Mets. He wanted to stay in New York. I wish the Mets would have re-signed him. And I really don't have much to say about the Mets right now. So don't.
Yeah, there's something to talk about. They ain't going in. Listen, the Mets. That's it. You answer your own question. You're going to talk about other things that are still happening or still haven't happened. Obviously, Bellinger's still out there.
Yeah.
You got Montgomery, Chapman. That we can talk about. And for you, Justin, I mean, anything else that you're watching when it comes to what's left of the remaining of one of the most boring off seasons I've ever seen in my life in free agency. So anything you got for me, Justin?
What the hell's going on with these pitchers? Pitchers and catchers reporting soon.
February 8th is what I heard. February 8th, because we have the game in, I think, Korea with the Giants and Dodgers, right? So, I mean, what was the Dodgers and Padres?
I think Padres, Dodgers. But March 20th and 21st, they're having the 2-game opening series. So they're going to get their spring training started a little bit earlier. I mean, what the hell's going on with Blake Snell?
Rhys Hoskins, I think, was the big signing this week. We didn't even
signed with the Brewers, 2-year deal. I think 17.5 per.
I mean, I can't get that excited about that. He didn't play last year. Okay, 30 home runs 2 years ago, but
Jordan Montgomery's still on the board.
Bellinger.
Bellinger's on the
Justin
board.
Turner, JD Martinez. Where are these guys going?
Jorge Soler's on the board still. I mean,
it's almost February.
There's plenty of very good players that can help your team win.
Blake Snell. I mean, we still got to talk about Blake Snell. I mean, where is this guy going? I mean,
right?
Blake Snell right now has a Scott Boras problem.
And they all seem to, right? Chapman's Boris. We got what's his name? Bellinger's Boris. I mean, all these guys seem to have one common
But
theme.
according to a leak that came out, Blake Snell from his agency was seeking 9 years and $275 million.
And I want to say a little to Brad. How you doing? And
so
not the show tonight.
Now it's time to start backing off of that because first of all, he felt disrespected apparently by the 5-year 150 that the Yankees apparently offered.
9 for $275 for a guy that's
I don't even think he's worth that much, to be honest.
Wins and more. I mean,
really, Disrespect me, please.
I guess,
right. Exactly.
I guess his point
was a little more fair.
I suppose his point is that Yamamoto got 10 years. I should get that. Is that what maybe you think his point would be?
I mean, potentially, but I mean that AAV for him is crazy. I would not pay him that much, and that's $30.5 million.
But what about these guys like Turner and Martinez, Chris? These guys that are still out there, would be serviceable at bats. Jorge Soler, was a big bat last year. You think a team like the Marlins that is trying to win could still very much win and get back to the postseason would bring him back. And there's a lot of free agents out there that are still worth something. And I'm just trying to figure out why these guys haven't signed.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. I know the Turner possibly going back to Boston. I know Martinez possibly going to Arizona, but now Arizona just signed Jock Peterson, so they're probably done, right? So I don't know where these guys are going to fall. I'm sure they'll get a job because they're still very productive. I mean, all these guys have put up big numbers, the last couple of years. So I don't understand why they're not. I mean, the Yankees don't need one of those guys. I would love to have them, but I just
Tim
don't
Anderson's out there. Does that mean that, he won a batting title before, been a very serviceable player in the past, all-star, but, had some injuries, dropped off. I mean, still some big names out there.
Absolutely. I don't get it.
It's been a weird off-season, very weird off-season.
Everybody thought, once Ohtani signed, things would heat up, or once Yamamoto signed, things would heat up, but it's just not go. It's not going. I know that they always bring it up. I'm sure you guys heard it too. Is that maybe they should do something with, like the NFL has or the NBA has. They have that free agency period, so that stuff.
Yeah, the Pinstripe Chronicle guys were talking about that. Bobby and Rob Barros and Donald Stewart. And one more time, Brad Coleman. I'll definitely see you on Friday. Next Friday. This is not the show you're used to getting on Sportswire. The last week, I apologize to let you down on that because he was expecting the fireworks that we've had the last few days when we do wrestling. But thank you, Brad, for tuning in. But I mean, these guys out there, I mean, these are some pretty prominent names. I mean, if I would pull out my Topps baseball card collection, these were guys that I would love to see on a field somewhere, and they're still not out there. I mean, do we have to wait for these guys till spring training or what?
Pretty much.
I think it's worse for the pitchers.
I have a good idea.
What?
I have a great idea because baseball's the only sport that needs this. Like football, guys are going to sign day one. NBA, day one. Hockey, day one.
Yeah.
How about we propose roster freezes? You unfreeze the roster, so no free agents can sign until Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Teams can start signing on the day after Thanksgiving. And then you freeze free agency at Christmas time. No signing.
Yeah, I don't know because these guys, a lot of them.
I don't think the players' union would like that.
They're not. I mean, the players' union will not go.
Other moves of note, you had James Paxton sign a 1-year deal. I think with the Dodgers. They continue to do more. Aroldis Chapman signs with the Pirates. I think that's an interesting one. 1 year, $10.5 million.
Pirates, that's the Pirates always do this, right? They sign a veteran, trade a year, and then they trade him at the trade deadline.
But I think it's fascinating. Real quick. We'll certainly move on to a couple of thoughts in baseball, then get to the NFL, and I'll bring Ron Franklin in here, and we'll spend about 20 minutes on the two games, and maybe we'll talk about Harbaugh. But teams like the Pirates, teams like the Royals. They're in divisions that, you could win it this year. And even if you bring in a guy like Chapman, you also brought back McCutchen and you bring these guys back or sign these guys, you know what? They're low risk moves. You're in a very winnable division. And you know what? Maybe you can win it, because look at these teams. The Cubs have had what a disappointing offseason. You got the Reds. Okay. I mean, some people are high on the Reds, others not so much. The Brewers. Okay, they brought back a bat. They got Hoskins. Could be an interesting move. You got the Cardinals. I don't know what to make of them, but if you're the Pirates, maybe this is your lucky year. The Royals, signed Waka and Lugo, a bunch of other guys. Hunter Renfroe, and they're in a division, also a very weak division. The Twins, who knows with them? The Guardians, obviously impacted by the TV deal. The White Sox, they're obviously going nowhere. You got Detroit. But that's a very winnable division. So you know what? Teams like the Royals and Pirates, maybe you get lucky, you make these moves, and you might have a chance to steal a division.
I'm with you. The Central in both leagues, the Centrals are wide open.
I think the American League Central's far more wide open because I don't think anything about the Twins. The Guardians have no offense.
Think about it. All these guys can make impacts on that division if they sign with one of these teams. It could be Cleveland, maybe not the White Sox, but Cleveland or Minnesota.
Detroit.
They could sign one of those big bats. One of them could sign, Snell and really put themselves in position.
Well, a team like Detroit would be fascinating if they signed to Snell because you're in a winnable division.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be very fascinating. I don't know if he'd go to Detroit.
And Detroit did spend money early in the offseason.
Yeah.
They were one of the early active teams.
Yep.
I mean, you think about the two presumptive. Well, you could say that the Twins are a presumptive favorite in the AL Central, but the Guardians are always up there, right? They're a team in transition, right? First year. Post Terry
Francona significantly, ownership situation, correct?
Yeah, right. The ownership situation, they don't spend a lot of money. The Brewers in the National League, Craig Counsell's gone, Pat Murphy's in as the manager. They could be in through a little bit of a transition. Remember, no Woodruff, Corbin Burns likely a trade target because they're probably not going to be able to afford to pay the kind of contract that Corbin Burns is going to command as a top tier pitcher in the National League. So it's really a transition year. So if you're a young team like the Reds, why not add an extra bat, right?
Well, the Reds got Candy Barrow. I mean, they've got a good lineup. I mean, I think the Reds have added some pitching, and definitely the Reds. I agree with you. And other names out there, real quick, is Ahmed Rosario is a free agent. If that's a name that certainly wets the bed. I don't know about that. Carlos Santana, another like a Jorge Soler, JD Martinez. Justin Turner type, he's out there. G-Man Choi, I would certainly throw that out the window. You obviously also got Gio Urshela for the local guys. Tommy Pham, ex-Met, he's still out there. Tommy Pham's an interesting, serviceable guy. Could provide something to a team. Some good moments for the Mets, certainly in the past, in the Padres. You could
argue he was the best. He was the best Met in the first half last year.
Absolutely, no question about it.
I would think a pitcher would want to sign as soon as possible, right? So that they can get into spring training and be ready, and more than the hitters. Obviously hitters want to also, but I think the pitchers more than the hitters. So you would think, the Snell or the other starters that are still out there or the relievers need to sign quick, so they can start getting ready because pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
February 8th is what I have because of the early.
As a pitcher, you fall behind your spring training shot, and you're still finishing up, and you're still essentially finishing up spring training in April, and we still see that.
Yes. Yep.
In a lot of these April games, a lot of these guys are still in spring training mode because they're not fully.
They barely go 4 innings.
We see that all the time.
Yeah. We'll certainly find out. Also, a couple of other free agent names, Clayton Kershaw. I think that's obviously an asterisk. We'll certainly, I'm sure, revisit that. Hector Neris is out there. Not really going to certainly, spend any time significantly on that. And that's pretty much kind of where we're at this point. We spoke about Montgomery. We spoke about Chapman. We spoke about Snell. We spoke about Bellinger. And, what remains to be seen. In the interest of time, Rob Maraska, before I get to closing thoughts with you, anything else baseball we're gonna bring up in not Met memories because just in the interest of time.
No, I wasn't.
Nothing. No, I'm only goofing with you.
I know, but you were saying the American League Central, right?
Yep.
I think if the Royals make 1 or 2 moves, I think the Royals could have.
Oh, I tell you what, the Royals made going early at one point for most of the offseason. They spent the second most money, and they got Waka, Lugo, Renfro. I mean, they made a lot of moves. Yep.
By the way, we all know the Royals are going to win the World Series this year, right?
Because they who this time who won the last?
They signed Will Smith.
Who won the
last? That's right.
He's won 3 straight. He's won 3 straight titles.
That's
with 3 different teams.
or you know what? Or just keep an eye out on what team he gets traded to at the deadline.
Yeah, that was the other point. Yeah, good point. That's a very good point. That very.
But if the Royals make 1 or 2 moves, they could take that division.
Absolutely.
They're a scrappy young bunch.
Yeah,
I mean, remember Bobby Witt Jr.
I love that kid. He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, so that's that's what I have to say in my closing thoughts.
Listen, you know what? the offseason that they've had, you look at the names they brought in: Chris Stratton, Seth Lugo, Will Smith. You talk about 1 year, $5 million. You could flip him at the deadline. Excellent point. Michael Walker, 2 years, $32 million. Can definitely flip him. You got Lugo. Could definitely flip him next year if you're struggling. Hunter Renfroe, 2 years, $13 million. Definitely flip that. I mean, so you made some moves that, you can certainly get some players back if you're not contending, but you're in a division where you could definitely win. I think it shows you that this offseason, there's teams out there that, you could still say, they had a good offseason, kind of get maybe swept under the rug with the Dodgers, because the Dodgers have pretty much done so much. And, it's obviously, one for the ages there. But, this offseason has been a major dud. But, Hall of Fame has been a lively discussion that certainly, gets us a little closer to baseball. And like I like to say, Rob, today is going on January 27th. So the good news is officially 40% of winter is in the books. So that means that we're just about at the halfway point in winter. What that also means is that every minute we gain light. And now if you look outside here in New York and elsewhere, it's now light till about almost 5:30. So that means in a month from now, it's going to be 6 o'clock and you're going to start feeling a little bit better. And, I know it was tough this past week with the cold and the rain, but, we're getting there. We're getting slowly but surely. That groundhog is going to tell us there at the Staten Island Zoo, it's going to be 6 weeks in spring and we're going to have some warmer weather ahead. And I got a very good feeling about it. So we're almost there. Just going to hang in there a little while longer. Baseball is going to start, going to have some games. You're going to be on here talking about those Mets and talk about those Yankees, and Bobby Tats was roaring, and with Donald Stewart. And boy, you want to talk about talkers, Donald Stewart definitely is a guy that he definitely speaks his mind. No, love those guys. Those guys, really, really awesome guys. It was so great to be on their podcast. Obviously, it was nice to be on your and Patrick's podcast. I'll definitely try to get on to Sharman with you in a couple of weeks to induct Sharman. But Rob, obviously, want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. And one more time, I want to plug Joe Dell in that Metal Hall of Fame. Want to give him a big shout out on that. Obviously, Joe Dell is always working on different things. He's been an early supporter of us here. And it's guys like Joe Dell that have been supporting Sportswire Radio. That's why we're here 5 years. It's guys like that go out there, always make sure to listen, spread the word. So definitely that Metal Across America series for the Metal Hall of Fame. It's available, all that merchandise. It's at metalhalloffame.org. So if you're a metal guy and obviously you're looking for some big metal news, I know obviously Ozzy spoke about doing 2 more shows in Birmingham. I don't know how he's going to pull that off, but that's obviously, they're talking about AC/DC touring, a stadium series running in the summer. Who knows how that'll work out, but obviously want to support the metal that's true. And Joe Dell has always been a true, and also his music plays on sportswireradio.org with Sleepy Hollow, and make sure you support guys that always are playing the music for us. And Joe's always listened to us. He goes back so long that he used to listen to Sportswire. We were the Sports Report with his breakfast Saturday morning. So he was listening to Rob talk Met memories and talking about all that stuff, good stuff in between. Joe is right there. So let's support those that have supported us. metalhalloffame.org. Get that Metal Across America series from Joe Dell. Thank you, Joe, for your support over the years. Rob Maraska, I want to give you the floor, and thank you, Rob, for your support. Obviously, we are celebrating our 5-year anniversary. We started out on January 25th, 2019. It was myself and a guy, Robert George Hines. We did a show, ironically, on the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, and he told me we'll do a show, and it'll be 1 hour long. I think I told this, Chris, on your podcast, and I was clutching my hands. I was nervous, and he was like, just go for an hour, and we'll stop at an hour. And we did like 59 minutes and 25 seconds, and here we are all these years later. We just got mentioned on Jimmy Controversy's Pro Wrestling Venom, which has like, I think, 57 likes on YouTube already. That tells you that how far the platform has come. But Rob, floor is yours, my friend. Anything else want to plug, share, or say? And we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Another great show, guys. Another fun Friday night. Real quick, I just do want to give my cousin Joe Dell a plug. He worked really hard on these heavy metal Hall of Fame shirts.
Yeah, see, I know he's tagged me. I know it's him and Anthony Finkel that got to tag me like every 15 minutes, and we love Anthony Finkel. I'm there. I'm liking you. Don't worry. I mean, I know. I see the videos. I see it. No, we love Anthony Finkel and DPH Property Maintenance, 347-228-2625. Give him a call. Support his platform. But I know Joe's one of those guys that tags. Make sure to tag me. It's okay. I see it. I'm going to share it. Don't worry. But no, we love Joe. Obviously, we love Anthony and Joe. They're doing great.
Yeah, they both are. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, R. Maraska on Twitter, Rob Maraska on Facebook, and
you want to say something else about Joe real quick? I know you. Anything else you wanted to add on Joe?
No, that's it. Just check out those drawings.
Yeah, Joe's a great drawing. And by the way, I want to give Joe one more plug, because actually hanging up on my wall is actually a Sleepy Hollow signed art design from Joe himself. So actually, I still have it hanging up in the book that he wrote years ago. He signed the book for me. So I mean, so Joe
that's
is.
right.
We got Joe. We love Joe. We love Anthony Finkel. Anthony's been a big supporter. He's always, pushing us out there, and he's, sharing our stuff. He's DPH property maintenance. So if you need help, and whether it's maintenance, whether it's property, whatever it might be, building, certainly supervision, he's there. And Joe Dell, metalhalloffame.org. That's metalhalloffame.org. And it's the Metal Across America series for the Metal Hall of Fame. Great shirt, great merchandise. Go out there and get it. Support those that have supported us. It's always about those that have been there from the beginning. It's always about community. I always say, why have I survived for 5 years? Why have I thrived? I thrived through a worldwide pandemic. I thrived through sports shutting down. I thrived by so many different things that were the odds against me. The odds are podcasts do not survive. And I have grown every single year, every single day. So it's because of people like Joe Dell that we need to support. So go out there and make sure you support him and support Rob Maraska. He's been a big supporter, longest tenured analyst. He's our 9th member of the Hall of Fame. He's the second to last member of the first class. So, Rob, we'll see you next week. R. Maraska on Twitter. Okay. Also, Rob Maraska on Facebook. And thank you, Rob. And glad you're doing well. Glad you're feeling better. And glad, Ro's mother is doing well. I'm glad that everybody's doing well. And, like I said, just keep punching. We're almost there. 40% of winter is over. 40% of what means we're getting close to baseball, getting close to warmer weather. We're getting close to all that good stuff. So we're almost there, Just got to hang in a little while longer. And I promise you we're going to get there.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you guys next week.
All right. That was Rob Maraska here, longest tenured analyst in our Hall of Fame. So obviously, in the remaining of time, Ron Franklin, I sent you the link. If you want to pop on for a few minutes for football, we can do that before I pick the games. And we only got 2 games. I got to ask you guys about the news about Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers. I think it was kind of expected. I think Justin was calling it weeks ago, but give me your reaction to it. I'm sure, Chris, you're going to talk about it. Maybe did you give me the show before the Harbaugh news came or after this? I'm trying to remember.
After it. Yeah, we spoke about it a little bit.
Okay. Ron Franklin's on the way. Ron, I only got about 20 minutes of football, so get your butt here. Make sure you're going to give me some opinions and give me more than one-word answers because I do not have much time. I don't have much of a voice. I'm looking forward to seeing you, though. But Jim Harbaugh, give me your reactions. What do you think, Chris? And I'm sure I'll hear it on the Liftoff Jet Show, which we'll play later tomorrow.
Yeah, the Harbaugh to, the Chargers, that seemed like a perfect fit, right? It was one of those things we were talking about for a while. The Chargers needed this kind of, change in their organization. Obviously, they got a pretty decent roster. Obviously, it's not perfect, but you know what? They got the most important thing before Harbaugh got there. They got the franchise quarterback. Now you got the head coach. So that's the 2 main things you need in the NFL right now is a good head coach and a franchise quarterback. And they got that. And now they got a winning head coach, a guy that's won everywhere he's been.
We spoke about it last week. Maybe the most successful college NFL coach recently. I mean, Pete Carroll would probably be number 1. But
and Jimmy Johnson, you got to throw him in there. But other than that, Switzer took over Jimmy Johnson's team, so he wanted
up Switzer. You were like,
exactly. But no, but I thought it was a perfect match there for Harbaugh to get there and straighten out, and maybe the Chargers can finally reach the levels that that I think a lot of us get coming into every season. We always say, "Oh, the Chargers."
Yeah, the last 2 years we've been on the air, and Justin was like Chargers, and this guy was like that.
And then
everybody says Chargers,
and the sad part is with the Chargers, they've been like this since the early 80s. I mean, since I've been watching football, they have been the same team. Good teams, but they just find ways to lose.
Never quite. I think the only time they really punched above expectations was that one year they went to the Super Bowl with Stan Humphries as the quarterback, and they were kind of came on Bobby Ross. Bobby Ross,
right?
A decent NFL and college coach. You have to add him. He went to a Super Bowl, and
they go with their average quarterback. Meanwhile, they had Fouts, you had Rivers, you had Breeze. But they go there with Stan Humphries. So
that's right. That's my point. That's what, and I would add Bobby Ross as a successful college and pro coach, Super Bowl
for a couple of years.
He had a good record, so you throw him in there. But I mean, Justin, Jim Harbaugh. We'll get to Ron Franklin. Ron, how you doing? Nice to see you. And Jim Harbaugh, Justin, what do you think?
Perfect match made in heaven for the LA Chargers here between Herbert and Harbaugh. This is the kind of move that can elevate them immediately to the top of the AFC. It really can. I mean, we've seen how good of a quarterback Justin Herbert is, and now we'll see how the pieces around him shape up. Austin Eckler had kind of a down year. Keenan Allen, great year, getting older. Mike Williams coming off a torn ACL. Could be interesting to see if Quentin Johnston in year 2 could take a step up at receiver. But I mean, you like you said, you get a proven winner everywhere he goes, right? He might not have the Super Bowl yet, but he's taken the 49ers to the Super Bowl, right? So he has an NFC championship on his resume. Obviously, another full circle moment for him. He quarterbacked the Chargers. But ultimately, this was the only play. This was the only hire, especially after the disaster that was Brandon Staley. You couldn't continue to ruin the chances you had with Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert is in the prime of his career. He's ready to be at that Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow level. He's every bit as talented, but his team has always dragged him down. He's never been able to get quite to that tier.
Yeah, I think that's
now
excellent.
With Jim Harbaugh, you can start to enter that conversation. Where things stand next year, we'll see.
Good point. Excellent. Ron Franklin, nice to see you. I knew you weren't going to be much adverse in the Baseball Hall of Fame, so we saved the best for last. What do you think, though, Harbaugh to the Chargers? It's a franchise that's, struggled, but they get a coach that's had a lot of success, and what do you think?
I'm not surprised that he went to the Chargers. Almost everyone was talking about it, either him or Bill going there, and they picked up Harbaugh, and I'm glad he's back in the NFL. I think that's where he truly belongs. He got what he wanted done in college. Now it's time to come back and continue his NFL career as a head coach.
Good point. I think that obviously you look at, the model, Pete Carroll did the same thing, didn't have as much success in the NFL, had a great run in college, came back to the NFL, and we saw the run. But again, it's far and few in between college coaches and NFL coaches that have that kind of success. We spoke a little bit about certainly, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, Chris kind of said, scoffed a little bit at that, but he still did win a championship in the NFL and was very good in college. You've had other guys, Dave Wanstead was okay in college in the NFL. That's a name that people probably forget a little bit. Herm Edwards had a mixed record. I mean, Bobby Ross, I think, had, relatively okay run, Super Bowl and a national championship in college. Didn't end, I think, right in college with Bobby Ross. But, it's far and few in between coaches that do very well in both. But, we'll have to see there. And, real quick before I get to the two games, where do you think this leaves Bill Belichick for everybody?
Nowhere,
really?
I think he's out of a job this year.
Wow. Okay.
Because now look, think about it. There's 2 openings left, right? So let's just a quick recap. Brian Callahan gets the Titans job. Dave Canales gets the Panthers job. Raheem Morris got the Falcons job. Gerard Mayo, Antonio Pierce were in-house hires, and then Jim Harbaugh. That's the 6 hires right there, with the Commanders and the Seahawks remaining. And something tells me it's going to be Dan Quinn in Seattle, and it kind of seems like all signs are pointing to Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, to get the Commanders gig. And a part of me kind of thinks it's over for Bill. If he was tough to hire in this cycle, and he only interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons, didn't take an interview anywhere else, kind of thinks he's just that difficult to work with and not adaptable enough where teams willing to hire him.
Well, I mean,
now, granted, there's going to be some juicy spots next year. If the Cowboys fail in the playoffs again, the Eagles fail in the playoffs.
Jets.
The Jets.
Pittsburgh, maybe. You got Pittsburgh out there. Could be a possibility.
Right. Pittsburgh though, will always be on Tomlin's terms.
But his terms, we don't know those terms.
The big thing, I think, with Belichick is, and we kind of talked about this too, like earlier, like about a month or so ago when this first started coming out. Like what team is going to be willing to give him full control of the team? Right.
And we
I don't
spoke
think
about
any
his
team wants
record
to now.
outside of Brady is 20 games under 500.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think any team is willing to do that. Right.
No,
And
and
here's the other side too.
He even kind of hinted at it before he officially departed from New England. He said when they asked him would he be willing to kind of relinquish a little bit of control, he essentially said he would be open.
What is he, 71?
But here's the other thing too.
71.
I think so. Yeah.
Now, if he does, okay, let's say if he comes in as a coach, remember now the NFL is like all the other sports, is very analytically driven. And guess what? Bill Belichick is not an analytical guy.
No,
right?
he's not.
He's
And
an
if you look at if you look around the league right now, what is in terms of coaching, what is right now dominating the league? The Mike Shanahan tree.
Right.
Right? Kyle Shanahan. Think about all the best coaches in football. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay,
Sirianni. Yep.
There's gonna be no more old school coaches anymore. You know, like yelling at everybody and all that.
Well,
that's
there ain't
done.
that many of them left now. I
that.
mean, who's left? I mean, Ron Rivera's out, right? He was out in Washington.
Yeah.
Belichick was out. Carroll was out. Okay, Tomlin would sort of be in that line, but he's still 51. I mean, that's a certainly different dynamic. I mean, it's
Andy
really
Reid.
determined. I mean, I couldn't tell you what would be of these older coaches. That's why if Belichick doesn't get a job next year, he certainly could be done.
I think
Ron's
he's done. I think
the only coach I could see, the only older coach I could see getting another job, I don't know, obviously won't be this year, but maybe next year, would be Pete Carroll. Because Pete Carroll still has that great relationship with the younger players. He's got he's the ball of energy. He's got great energy for his age at 72.
Yeah.
But I just think it's over. I mean,
the days of Coughlin and the disciplinarian dictator, those days are gone.
And I think Carroll also kind of lets them run the offense, lets them run the defense. Belichick is not going to do that.
And I want to say it. We'll get to the two games in a second, and I'll get to Ron. Listen, I do a lot of college athletics, and college sports has changed a lot too, because college used to have those older taskmaster, everybody in line. I've seen it in the college world covering our college sports that have helped us get to 5 years. And it's now, you're 35 and, you're basically hip and you basically are a player's coach. And, that's kind of the model. Listen, the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, players got, Vrabel's out there. Vrabel is another guy that.
See, Vrabel's different. I think, he ends up sitting out the year because I don't think he's going to get one of the two jobs. Vrabel's going to be first in line next year. He's going to get a big-time job next year.
First in line, and that's where the line gets cut off. But the guys that, go again, the Belichicks of the world, those type of coaches,
because they want the guys that the hot shot coordinators, right? People are talking about Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, right? They're talking about Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator. And think about this. If I don't know if he will, but if let's say Bobby Slowick gets the commander job, that would mean think about this fun fact. There are 5 current head coaches right now that were assistants under Mike Shanahan in the 2013 season. Kyle, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Raheem Morris.
And Raheem Morris was the Bucs coach at one point, though. He would be
and he went to become like wide receivers, like wide receivers coach,
which is interesting because that was a team that was like 4-12 or something like that.
They were 3-13 that year, but
that wasn't the team that won the division.
They won the division the year before with RG3 as a rookie.
Yes,
he had the injuries the next year. So
that was.
But that's the kind of guy. That's the kind of guy that they want, and we're kind of moving past that with Bill.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I want to get to Ron Franklin, then Joe Dalla. Then we're going to pick the two games and get to closing thoughts. Anything else you want to add, Ron Franklin?
Honestly, I think I don't see anywhere Bill's going because, the Falcons got their guy, and I was actually shocked that they didn't go with Bill Belichick. So I agree with Justin. I think he's out of a job this year.
Yeah, I think that's we're all in agreement on that. We'll see even after next year because of the age. And Joe Dell wants to say, my question is, why has not Rob Maraska not even on the ballot. Well, he's already a Hall of Famer on Sportswire. That's why, Joe. He already got in the Hall of Fame. Justin's getting in next week, so he's going to get his turn in history and Sportswire. But Rob already made the Hall of Fame, so he's already off the ballot. You can't put him in the ballot, but he's already in. And, Carlos Beltran will get in the Hall of Fame. He'll probably have to wait maybe 2 more years, but, he'll probably get in. But thank you for that, Joe. And maybe we'll get you one day in the Hall of Fame, Joe. You'll have to come on the video one of these days, Joe Dell. Maybe I'll induct you in the Hall of Fame. But you know what? Obviously, we got 2 more games left, and let's go to them. We'll go to one by one here. And you could have left your dog here on the show, Chris, because I told you, Chris, I was trying to make you feel a little bit better privately. We had a wrestler last month come on the show who pulled out a gun. We had Jimmy Controversy, who is obviously everybody knows him in the hardcore world. Mikey Anarchy came on and pulled over his back, and it was almost like you could connect the dots with it. He's had so many cuts on his back. We had Hardcore come on, who has 3 syringes put up his lips 2 weeks ago on the air. So the dog being on Sportswire is nothing to compare to many of our friends that support Sportswire Radio. So I would have said the dog would have almost been tame compared to some recent guests and friends of the platform. That's not even counting Necro Daddy, the Tribal Cheese, James Barris, who actually had his own entrance music he came out to yesterday. So you could have kept the dog, but maybe next time. In the interest of games here, we got 2 left here. It's the final 2, and I hope that people have gone out and picked those games. But let's go with Ron Franklin first. Ron, I want to go with you because obviously I know you got something to say here, and you came on with us, Ron, and thank you for doing that. And let's go and pick those games here, especially because there's only 2 games left, and it's for the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. And the first one's a 3 o'clock game. It's those Baltimore Ravens against Taylor Swift and her Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Ron, I'm sure I might know where you're going to be going. I know most of America might be going one way, but I'm still going to ask you anyway. And what do you think? 3 o'clock. It's the Ravens 3.5-point favorites. They're kind of the obligatory 3.5-point favorite at home. AFC Championship. Does Baltimore return to the Super Bowl for the first time in over a decade since, ironically, it was Harbaugh versus Harbaugh? Or do the Chiefs go to their 4th Super Bowl in 5 years and kind of become what the Patriots were all those years with Brady? So, Ron, what do you got?
I'm one of the many Americans that are going with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going with America because I'm not trying to see another Taylor Swift Super Bowl.
Well, as somebody put it to me, one of our listeners, Mr. Steven Zapperstein, we were in a pizza place. I don't want to name the place. And he goes, what do you think on the Chiefs? He's like, I'll tell you what I think. I'm like, okay. He says, well, I think it's rigged. And the NFL's pushing Taylor Swift and the Chiefs. And he was like, here's my reasons why. Did you watch that play and the field goal kick BMS? I'm like, yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. Ron, thank you for the observation. Justin, Ravens and Chiefs. Ravens certainly have been the best team, I would say, pretty much for the most part in the NFL this year. They were, I would say, pretty impressive, especially in the second half against Houston in a terrible game. What a miserable weather conditions that was. But that's kind of been the Northeast these past couple of weeks. Really, everywhere it is winter. But
not going to be much better this week.
I saw that the forecast, and it's another. Once again, it's like the last 25 Sundays in New York. It's pretty much rained like 21 of them, and that's where we are this Sunday. And it'll be, I'm sure, no different in Baltimore. But again, Ravens 3.5-point favorites. Chiefs, won a game that they hung around long enough. And Buffalo, to be fair, let Kansas City drive the ball up and down the field most of that game, except that one fumble in the 4th quarter. Otherwise, I think Kansas City only punted maybe once in that game, if at all. But what do you think here is the Ravens are 3.5-point favorites, 3 o'clock AFC Championship to represent the AFC? Who do you got this year?
Yeah, if you look at the Chiefs, I mean, that was one of the more efficient games you'll ever see. I mean, they only ran 41 offensive plays last week. And still scored the number of points that they did. To me, they're clicking on all cylinders right now. I mean, this is the best defense that they've had under Patrick Mahomes. Their offense is starting to get things figured out. Rashee Rice has really stepped up for them. Obviously, we know about the factor that Travis Kelce brings, but and the hardcore running of Isaiah Pacheco has really given this offense a boost. Now they're going up against a team, to me, that really has very little weaknesses, if at all. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens are well-rounded on all 3 levels defensively, and on offense, you're getting Mark Andrews back. I mean, how much more of a boost can you get than getting your all-pro tight end back? And Lamar Jackson's going to have a full complement of weapons at his disposal, whether it's Zay Flowers, OBJ, Bateman, the two tight ends, Likely and Andrews. You got Edwards at running back. I mean, they're rolling on all cylinders right now, and it's going to be a fascinating game. And I think this game is going to be the main event. It really will.
Yep.
I'm going to take the Chiefs because you're giving me the 3.5. This game's a toss-up. In terms of who wins, it's a toss. It really is a toss-up.
Chiefs are a veteran team. They've been here before, and they find ways to win. This is their, I think, 7th consecutive championship game appearance, and they find ways to win.
6, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're on the verge of their potential 4th Super Bowl in that 6-year span. So it's hard to doubt the Chiefs. I know one thing from a spread perspective, I'm not going to doubt them. I'll take the Chiefs with the 3.5.
I could certainly understand that. And thank you, Ethan, for the kind words about the live streams. And I look forward to you tuning in to the next one. Chris, Ravens 3.5-point favorites. Again, Chiefs, got to give them credit. They drove the ball up and down the field. And other than a questionable turnover that, was reversed against them, really, Buffalo could not stop them much. And, but Baltimore has been very impressive. They have been kind of the premier team in the NFL this year, but it's 3:00 to be the representative of the AFC in this year's Super Bowl. Who do you got between the Ravens and the Chiefs?
Yeah, right now the Chiefs, like Justin said, I mean, right now that they are playing as good as they've played all season, right? All season they weren't playing that good. They didn't look anywhere near as good as they are now, right? Early on, we didn't think they'd get this far, but right now they're in the AFC Championship game, which, like you said, they've been for the sixth straight year now, which is pretty crazy to think about. And Mahomes is probably playing with his weakest offensive side, receiving core at least that he's ever had, and he's also going in without one of his guards. Joe Thuney's going to be out. Yeah. So I think that's going to play a big part in this game. To me, though, Baltimore has played the best all season, right? From
pretty much
week 1 till now, they've been pretty consistent. You've had this team, and I think the main part of it, you got Lamar Jackson turning into this really great passer now, not just obviously this threat, using his legs. Now he's a pretty good passer now. And you're getting Andrews back as well, even though Likely was playing great at tight end. So that just adds another element to this offense. And I think, Lamar Jackson, I think we talked about it a little bit on the podcast with Sharman. You got him. He's been playing with that chip on his shoulder all season long, right?
Especially after last year and not playing in the playoff game, how the season ended. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and nobody spoke to him when he was a free agent this past season, which I still find fascinating that no team even decided to even talk to him. There's definitely something wrong going on here in the league.
I think it was the playoff track record. Guys like John Gonzalez would talk about the playoff track record being suspect, and I think that's
you can say that, sure, but no matter what, I mean, you're going to tell me that I would love to have had Lamar Jackson instead of, before we were trying to get Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, think about it. The guy's in his prime.
I might have put Derek Carr honestly over Aaron Rodgers this year. I hate to say it.
He's 26 years old and he's already won an MVP, and nobody spoke to him.
He might get a second one this year. He's got a good shot at it.
Absolutely, he's going to win his second this year, and no team spoke to him. The Falcons, they needed a quarterback. They didn't even want to talk to the guy. But anyway, so he's basically playing with that chip on his shoulder. Like, a lot of teams. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody wanted me. All right, I'll show you what I could do. So he's now a win away from getting to the Super Bowl for the first time himself. So I think, to be honest, I think the Ravens are going to pull it out, even though the Chiefs are playing really good. And obviously they got one of the greatest coaches in Andy Reid. Yep. And then on the other side of the ball, they have one of the better defensive coaches we've seen in recent memory too, right? Because he's the guy that shut down the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl and during their perfect season.
And John's the second longest tenured coach in the league now.
Yeah.
That kind of gets lost in the shuffle, right?
Yeah. I think right now, I mean, like I said, they're playing great. but I think Baltimore's just a little too much. So I'm kind of with Justin taking the 3.5 points with Kansas City because you can't not take that points. But I think Baltimore is going to win this game.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens. Leave aside the outside noise. I think that Baltimore at home, if you've looked at Baltimore at home this year, I mean, they've been nearly unstoppable. Miami's gone in there. Look at what they did to them. I know Miami Paper Tigers. Houston had some momentum. Look at what they did to them last week. I mean, you look at Seattle earlier this year. Look at what they did to them. They beat the Rams there. I mean, you look at Baltimore, Detroit, a team that they could be seeing potentially. Look what they did to them at home. I mean, Baltimore at home has just been on a totally another level. And I think that Baltimore has a little bit of a home field advantage. I think with the way they're playing and the conditions. Also, I think Lamar Jackson's more versatile in the poor weather conditions than a Mahomes, let's say. I think that could be a big advantage with, obviously I think he's a little bit more flexible than Mahomes at this point. Defense, yes, for sure. Kansas City has a much improved defense. You're absolutely right, Chris. Kansas City's defense this year, this was not the Chiefs teams we're used to in the past. This was a Chiefs team that kind of gritted it out almost to be an 11-6 football team. But I think here, Baltimore wins. It'll be probably, if the weather is what it says it's going to be, rainy in the 40s, probably an ugly football game. I tend to think Baltimore finds a way to pull it out, but maybe 24-14, something like that. It'll be close. It'll definitely be close. With Kansas City, until somebody beats them, they're the champions, and they have been the premier team in the AFC these past 6 years. This is their 6th championship game appearance. Thank you very much, Justin, for correcting me on that. Because I think
that's insane.
Yeah, especially in this era. Listen, think about that, right? All the sports to go back and be in 6 straight championship games. Nobody's doing that.
And you know what? And let's give Mahomes credit. If he makes it to the Super Bowl this year, it'll be one of the most amazing jobs by himself doing.
Yeah, this was not a good Chiefs team, really. Conversely, compared to the teams that have been here.
And think about it, back-to-back years, he's doing it without Tariq, what's his name? Without Hill, two years in a row. I mean, it's crazy. It just shows you the greatness of Mahomes and that coaching staff.
And I think Spagnuolo did a great job defensively. That team, their identity's changed throughout, especially in that second half. Because again, you saw them on Christmas and they got beat by the Raiders. They were certainly unimpressive, but since that moment, they've been able to gut it out, and they're here. And until proven, a lot of people are going to certainly pick them. Ron Franklin, we've got the Lions and the 49ers. Now, everybody in America, I'm sure, is outside of one state, in particular, one city is going to be pulling for one team, in particular, our beloved Detroit Lions, who, get this, Ron, before this year had won one playoff game since 1957. This year, they've won 2 playoff games, and they hosted for the first time, I believe, in their history, 2 postseason games in a single season. This has been a dream season for the Detroit Lions. Everything is fallen into their favor. They did just enough to beat the Bucs. They did just enough to beat the Rams, but now they're going on the road to see the San Francisco 49ers. And the 49ers, honestly, were very lucky to beat your Green Bay Packers. I am very sorry about that because their Packers really should have won that game. But obviously, nothing to be ashamed of. You guys had a great season. You turned it on the second half. But I know you would like to have been here because you also beat the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. You would have felt really good about that game, I have no doubt. But I'm really curious where you go because the Lions you definitely don't like. And the 49ers just knocked you out kind of at the last minute last week. So for those that are listening, Ron Franklin, who do you have here in this matchup? I think it's a little bit of a high of a spread, though, but the 49ers are 7 favorites at home, Detroit Lions.
All week I was debating who should I pick for this game. One team just knocked us out. The other one's a division rival. Had a talk with some buddies, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with the Lions because at the end of the day, they're still representing the NFC North. And, the Niners just knocked us out, so I don't want to see them in the Super Bowl. So, and it should be us against the Lions, but, Brock Purdy didn't look like Brock Purdy against us, and we led 98% of that game, and unfortunately we couldn't get it done. So I think it's up to the Lions to represent the NFC North and take out the Niners and ruin their Super Bowl dreams.
Well, we're going to find out. The 49ers are here once again in a championship game. I believe that this is their fourth NFC championship game appearance right in the last 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's their fourth in 5 years. And one of those appearances led to a Super Bowl. The other 2 years, they were knocked out. The Rams knocked them out, and then the Eagles knocked them out on the road last year. But Justin, again, Lions are certainly America's darlings right now. I think that our buddy John Gonzalez sent me a photo. Like 90% of America literally was rooting for the Lions. But what do you think here? Because I have an interesting take when I get to my pick. But it's a 7-point spread for the 49ers against the Lions. Will the Lions go to their first Super Bowl in team history, or will the 49ers get to their second Super Bowl appearance in 5 years? Give me your thoughts.
Oh, I feel bad for the Lions here. This is just a tough spot to be in. Debo's off the injury report, so that they'll be pretty close to full strength. And when Purdy, McCaffrey, and Samuel play, I mean the 49ers are virtually unstoppable. Also, too, the Lions defense has just been a little too suspect at times. And you can't have a suspect defense against this kind of offense. I hate to say it, but I kind of feel like the bloom is off the rose here with the Lions, and I kind of think that it's going to get ugly too. I think the Niners are going to win handily between like 10 and 13 points at least.
You know what? You could certainly see that. Obviously, we'll see if San Francisco, which has been, again, obviously the premier team in the NFC, and Detroit's never really faced anybody at this level. So that's always an interesting when a team punches like this. But, Chris, obviously the Lions have been our kind of adopted team on Sportswire over the past couple of years, and they are 7-point underdogs, though, in this particular game. And will they go to their first Super Bowl? With the 49ers, who I think have the most NFC championship appearances of any team in the history of the NFC since the merger back in 1970. So we're kind of used to seeing the 49ers in this spot, but they have been the premier team. Will they keep it going, or will the Lions make some history? What do you think here? San Francisco, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, 7-point favorites over the Lions.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to see Detroit make it to their first Super Bowl. That would be great. But like Justin said, you got Debo coming back. Excuse me. And I thought, and I even said it on the podcast, I was like, without Debo, I think Detroit has a really good shot at beating this team. Because last week when he went down, you could see they are a totally different team without him, right? I'm not saying they're not a good team, but they are a totally different team, and they're a beatable team. And Green Bay had them, and like you said, they should have beat them, but they didn't. But and I think if he was not playing Detroit, because Detroit's going to score points against the 49ers. Their defense is not as good as it's been the last few years. It's still a solid defense, but it's going to give up points, right? So I think it's going to be somewhat of a shootout, but because Detroit's defense, like Justin said, it's just not good. I think the last 5 weeks they've given up over 300 yards passing every week. So they'll give up big plays too. And if Debo's playing, McCaffrey and everybody else, Kittle, Ayuk, you're just not going to stop that team on offense. If Purdy doesn't throw the ball away or something like that, and he's been very good. So I think San Fran is, sadly, I think they're going to win, but I like the 7 points. I just think it's going to be a back and forth game. I'm going to take Detroit with the points, but I think San Fran's going to pull it out.
All right, before I pick, TBK has a comment that for whatever reason, YouTube would not let him post, which I have no idea why. It's the second person in 2 days told me that they couldn't read their comment, but I will certainly get a chance to do that here. So this is what I was going to say. I've heard it said that this is the Ravens' toughest game yet. Luckily for those who have that opinion, it's okay to be wrong. Mahomes has yet to play a defense like this and having to come to the bank on top of it. I mean, look at how we, the crowd, disrupted the Texans not once, but twice, but 6 times. Lamar has 2 chips, meaning 2 championships, AFC championship and a Super Bowl on his mind, and a chip on his if we lose, meaning the chip on his shoulder. It's because we beat ourselves, period, if we lose. So he's going for the Ravens. That's his opinion. And it's, I think, a strong comment. And I picked the Ravens. So I hope that that's the case for him and the Ravens. But I am going for the Detroit Lions. But I am also cognizant of the fact that it's a 7-point spread. So theoretically, I could pick the Lions and the 49ers could win. But I will say that the 49ers at home are a little bit of a different animal. In home field, you would think that the 49ers would play up to standards. Maybe last week you make the point that, Green Bay had been firing on all cylinders. They had gone out there and they had a huge win against Dallas. They still had that momentum. San Francisco, taking some time to be able to kind of, get back. They hadn't played, and they hadn't played their regulars in a couple weeks, and maybe that was a point. But, I am going to pick the Lions because I think that the offense, Goff does just enough. I think the defense, while it has been suspect, San Francisco hasn't been playing that great either. And I think they do enough to make it competitive. And, I would certainly say I'm hoping they win outright. But I think it'll be close enough because if you look at the Lions' most recent games, even their wins, they've all been kind of close games for the most part, other than the Ravens game against TBK. So I tend to think it'll be certainly, closer than what maybe people will anticipate. And TBK wants to say, I will not be silenced, YouTube. I don't know why you couldn't post a comment, but I read it off for you anyway. So whatever little voice I have left, this is my third time on the air. So we are going to certainly move on to closing thoughts. But yes, I am picking the Lions. I hope they win, but I don't know. You can tell us what you think next week on the air. We'll have a slew of coverage on it. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll talk about what's left in the baseball offseason, WWE, and more. Let's get to closing thoughts because I don't have much left of a voice. Ron, it's good to be with you as always. I look forward to seeing you next week. And I want to give you the floor, my friend. And race season is coming ahead. I see that Kyle Busch shirt. It's getting there, my friend. Like I said, Ron, on the air, we're 40% through winter, which means all the good sports are coming back. The warmer weather. We're 1 minute away from nicer things ahead. And that's now about 5:30. It's dark now in your area, in our area, which is a good sign. So I'm giving you closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? Floor is yours. Be my guest.
Tom, it's always good being here with you guys. A little, 2-week break we had, rough week with our unfortunate loss, but, I got over that, and hopefully we see, 2 good games on Sunday and a pretty good Super Bowl. If you guys want to follow my Instagram, it's at ron.frm215. Gaming content, Packers content, of course, and random funny little videos and stuff like that.
I try to like some of your stuff. I'm trying, Ron. I'm always trying to like your stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and you're doing a great job for us. I appreciate you showing up, unlike that other guy who had 2 initials. So I certainly appreciate your team effort, and it takes a village, and you're doing good. And I hope to see you next week. Maybe we'll talk a little bit of football. We'll try to mix you whatever we can, and good stuff. And one more time that Instagram.
Instagram is ron.frm215. I'm always active on it, so if you want to DM me or anything, I'm always at my phone, even at work.
Good. We like that, Ron. We like that, yep.
And, even our season's over, we're replacing Joe Barry, thank God. It's always going to be Go forever until I drop dead. Hopefully not tomorrow.
Yeah, let's hope not tomorrow, Ron. I just started getting you on the shows on Sportswire, so let's hope let's not miss that talk.
And hopefully Royal Rumble is good, and we got around 3 weeks until NASCAR starts, and then around a month until Daytona 500. So my final thought is going to be go Pack go, and Kyle Busch is the best driver right now.
Awesome. Great stuff there. And thank you, Ron, for your support, your hard work. And thank you to everybody. And TBK says he thinks YouTube has a character limit. Okay, makes sense. That's why you couldn't see that comment. But Justin, want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. I'm looking forward to giving you a chance for a few minutes in the sun next Friday to join the rest of the colleagues in Sportswire Radio's Hall of Fame and give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? Floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Tom. Yeah, thanks again, guys. Another great show as we get ready for Conference Championship Sunday. Again, a quick congratulations to the Baseball Hall of Fame members, the newest members, Joe Mauer, Adrian Beltre, and Todd Helton. And next year is going to be exciting because you have Sabathia and Ichiro as 2 no doubt shoo-ins for the first ballot, and it kind of just sucks to see your childhood go like that, but that's kind of what's happened, right?
I remember yesterday, Ichiro 2001. What a magical season! I remember like yesterday, he came in and he was just like we
To
never
win,
seen anything like him.
win
Yeah,
Rookie of the Year, MVP, and then that 2004 season where
260 hits.
262 hits. I think George Sisler who had the record, something.
And Darren Erstad had like 257 a few years earlier, or something like that.
Yeah. Darren Erstad, really a good multifaceted player.
Yep. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I'm excited for these games. I'm hoping the San Francisco Detroit game is a good one, but like I said in the picks, I just feel like San Francisco's so much better. And the Chiefs Ravens, that's going to be the true main event. But another thing is, if you look at the cycle of coaching hires. You remember the talk over the last couple of years where people have been kind of complaining that there has not been enough diversity in the hires. And if you look at the cycle alone, you have Gerard Mayo, Antonio Pierce, his name is
Raheem Morris.
Raheem Morris. So three new black head coaches. Well, Morris is a second-time head coach, but still, three guys getting a job, and I believe Dave Canales becomes only the fourth coach in history with I think Mexican descent. One being the recently inducted Hall of Famer Tom Flores, Dave Canales was really the biggest surprise of them all because he was the one that really wasn't on anybody's radar, if you will. He was the Bucs offensive coordinator for a year, was the quarterback coach with Seattle the year prior under Shane Waldron and Pete Carroll, and kind of just flew under the radar, and the Panthers hired him. But then again, maybe that's kind of the guy that was going to take that job because of working with the owner. We know the craziness that he's brought in his couple of years. He's been owner of the Panthers, but it's a good cycle of coaches for sure. And I think a lot of these guys are going to turn out to be good. And there's more assistants still waiting for their turn. So that's kind of my final thoughts on the NFL head coaching cycle as well. So you can follow me on Twitter /X at JGNelly12. Instagram is JGNelly91.
Excellent stuff there. Thank you, Justin, for your hard work, and we'll certainly let you take your place in history next Friday. Chris, I'm going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. I'm looking forward to the Liftoff Jets coming to play this weekend here on Sportswire Radio. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And I'm looking forward to the Talking Rivals later this week, and fire away.
Tom, thank you very much, guys. Great show as always. Looking forward to the games on Sunday. Both should be good, hopefully. Definitely looking forward to baseball starting up, right?
It's not that far away. I just told you. Yep.
I want to see some of these guys getting signed, too, that we were talking about earlier. It's very interesting that they haven't signed yet. So every week I say it. All right, this is the week, right? So hopefully this is the week coming up that a lot more of the big name guys are signed. So we'll see what happens. And hopefully me and Patrick will be talking about it on Monday or Tuesday. If you guys can keep Patrick and his dad in your thoughts. His dad suffered a stroke, seizure type of thing. So I think he's coming home this weekend.
Oh, good.
I think he's got a lot of therapy in front of him, but unfortunately, I know from personal experience, physical therapy is not easy.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Makes it tougher too.
All our wrestlers that come on Sportswire, unfortunately, they've been through it. Therapy.
Yeah,
they've lived it.
It's very tedious. It's not easy, but definitely keep them in your thoughts this weekend. maybe even send him a message.
Yeah, definitely. I know Bobby Tats, unfortunately, his grandmother passed away. And
yeah.
Rob Maraska's fiance's mother was very sick, but she got over COVID and everything else, thank God. But Bobby Tats' grandmother, unfortunately, didn't make it. I know it's tough this time of the year to have a loved one, certainly go through these things. And, at least Patrick's father is, hanging in there, and we're going to definitely pray for him.
Seems like he's going to be all right, but, he's just got a lot of therapy in front of him, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I remember when my father years ago tore his meniscus or something. It was his like ACL or something like that. It took physical therapy was such a pain in the butt even then, but it's it's not easy. But
no, it's
definitely
not.
Pray for that. Yep, definitely gonna pray for him, and we'll look forward to whenever the Talking Rivals come back. It'll always have a place here in Sportswire.
We should be back Monday, he said, but we'll I'll let you know either way.
Definitely, and I think you gave me a liftoff jet show, which I couldn't play last week. There was one, I think the owner owned the rights. It was the one, not the one with Lee Valentin. It was another one. I couldn't play it for whatever reason, but I have this one you gave me this week. I have it in the. If I have any other questions, I'll make
with
sure.
Scott? With Scott Mason?
Yes, that was the one. I couldn't play it for whatever reason. I couldn't open the file for whatever reason. I had to have permission from maybe. You'll see it next time. But I'm gonna open the file tomorrow. If I can open the file, I'm just gonna play it. But for whatever reason, I couldn't open that file.
Maybe I'll send it again. I'll try to send it again.
Yeah, send it again because I would play it because I played a lot of these shows like a dead horse here. A lot of those shows we've had, we just keep playing them. So I would like to play some new ones. If you have a new show, I'll play a football marathon for that. So thank you, Chris, and congratulations on all your success. And also, real quick on the Hall of Fame, other guys on the ballot: Dustin Pedroia. I don't know if he makes it. Ian Kinsler, not going to make it. Felix Hernandez, another guy that'll be debatable for sure. And the rest of the ballot is basically a bunch of nobodies that really have no shot. Brian McCann, maybe he's a likely not off the ballot. But we'll talk about all that next week. And follow Chris, CP7Y, all those great platforms. I want to thank TBK and Randy Dillon for joining us at the top of the show. And one more time, from the bottom of my heart, as we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary and continue to celebrate that, 500 plus subscribers on YouTube. Got it all really in the last 8 months. I think about 70% of those subscribers were gained in the last 8 months. And that's
our for 1,000.
Oh, we're going to get there. I already got in the last 2.5 months, I've got over 100. You have to remember, this is why my voice is struggling. I've done almost 100 shows in 2.5 months. So we're going to get there. That's question
crazy.
About that. We're getting, crazy. Even the wrestlers have told me.
You got to start drinking a lot of hot tea with honey, maybe get that.
Well, I'm only on after Royal Rumble, so I'm slowing down a little bit. So we're not too bad. The next 2 days are a little better, so it's not as bad. But today was a special day. We wanted to push it, and Jimmy Controversy gave us the opportunity. But until then, I want to thank everybody. Sportswireradio.org is our internet radio station. If you want to hear Liftoff Jets, Talking Rivals, Baseball Banter, Sit Down Marks, Pinstripe Chronicles, Devil's State of Mind, all of our great shows, Squared Circle Radio, Grappling with Canada, A Work in Wrestling Progress, all those great shows, they're all there via the Listen Live button. Be More Talkative, hockey fan chat like from Randy and TBK. Jodell, thank you so much. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. And to celebrate our 5-year anniversary, we're joined by Ron Franklin, Justin Gianelli, Chris Bezea, Rob Maraska. I want to thank him as well, also on our Hall of Fame. And until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On the number one, the Level Radio station, the Sportswire Radio. I'll see everybody right after the end of the Royal Rumble on Sportswire.